Chapter 489. How is this possible? Ling Xiao, why are you here? Gue Wupu was stunned for a full 10 breaths before he roared at the sky. F***CK. How did Ling Xiao find this place? And how did he hide himself? With his godly soul's level, even a godly Emperor realm expert would not be able to avoid his godly soul's detection, let alone a mere godly overlord. But, inexplicably, Gue Wupu felt a chill in his heart. You. Dan Lao's eyes trembled, and he had a complicated look on his face. Nether demonic flame. I can't be wrong. After 3 years, you've changed so much that I can't recognize you. You're taller and more handsome. Most importantly, your temperament has become colder and more arrogant. But, aren't you a little too different? Why does your face look so unfamiliar? But, no matter what, Dan Lao did not believe that there was a young man in this world who could merge the heaven and earth ominous flame into his body. Otherwise, it would not be called a heavenly fortune. It would be called a rotten street. This person must be as you are. Haha, Gue Wupu. We meet again. Ling Xiao smiled faintly, and a vast spiritual aura surrounded him. Heaven and earth cleared up, and the wind and thunder that had dissipated came back to the sky. His cultivation level had reached the 6th grade of the divine overlord realm. Even the power of his divine soul had increased significantly and was close to the 5th grade. With the power of the sky demon's body, merging the elixirs would not take much time. As for Gue Wupu, he could kill him once in the Wu Ho ghost realm, let alone in his own world. Ling Xiao, do you really think I'm afraid of you? Gue Wupu gritted his teeth, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He had reached the 6th grade of the Divine King realm, and the dark Inyama scripture had evolved into a new soul form. Although the saber in Ling Xiao's hand was strange, but, I am the heavenly mandate, and I am protected by the heavenly Tao. Otherwise, how could he explain the many spiritual materials he had found so casually? Therefore, Gue Wupu did not panic, and was even eager to try, even though the words "destiny belongs to you" sounded a little empty. However, the protection of the heavenly Tao had indeed existed since ancient times. Perhaps the realm he had broken through was the key to killing Ling Xiao. Beep. Destiny's child is overthinking things and is ready to die. Congratulations to host for plundering 500 luck points and 5,000 villain points. Oh, actually, I should thank you for helping me refine the spiritual materials into pills. How does the soul-dissolving grass taste? Ling Xiao smiled inexplicably, while the surging battle intent in Gue Wupu's eyes instantly froze. What the F***CK? What did he mean by that? Is he thanking me for helping him refine the spirit materials into medicinal pills? Don't you think you've gone overboard with your pretentiousness? But how did he know that I had a soul-dissolving grass? Could it be that Ling Xiao had been hiding in the dark all this time? That was impossible. If he had been hiding in the dark from the beginning, wouldn't it have been easier for him to kill him when his soul collapsed? It was very confusing. I've been pretending to be a pig for 30 years. Why do I suddenly feel fat? What are you trying to do? Gue Wupa clenched his fists, and soul light surged around him. It was obvious that he was ready to attack. But this time, he did not dare to use the Wushu Ghost Realm. This Ghost Realm could indeed greatly increase his battle prowess. But previously, the ghosts inside had all been killed by Ling Xiao. More importantly, the Ghost Realm had a slight connection with the underworld. Once it was activated, it required a holy sacrifice. He was afraid that if he could not defeat Ling Xiao, he would not even have a chance to escape. Of course it's to kill you, evil demon. Ling Xiao smiled, but Gue Wupa looked at Elder Dan with some disdain. Evil demon? The demonic intent in your body is more terrifying than a true demon. You're calling me an evil demon? Ling Xiao, don't think that you can easily kill me just because I lost to you once. You know this old thing, don't you? Your good master is still in my hands. Why don't we make a deal? Gue Wupa smiled coldly, but Ling Xiao nodded slightly. Let's hear it. I'll let your master go, and you return the soul-sucking sacred pearl to me. We'll mind our own business and go our separate ways. How about that? Okay. Ling Xiao did not even think about it. He waved his hand and summoned the bloodthirsty ghost pearl. Let Elder Dan go? Ha. Ling Xiao, do you think I'm stupid? If I let this old thing go, you and your master will join forces. What chance do I have? Return the sacred pearl to me first, and I'll let him go. Gui Wupa's eyes narrowed. As long as the sacred pearl was in his hands, he was confident that he could fight Ling Xiao. When the time comes, you stole my spirit pill, and I'll swallow your spirit. It'll still be effective. With the sacred pearl in his hands, he would no longer have to work hard to raise slaves to cultivate. Who couldn't he swallow in the Shenzhou continent? As for how Ling Xiao knew about the good fortune he had recently obtained, no matter how meticulous Gui Wupa was, he would never have guessed that this domain was under Ling Xiao's control. Damn, are you kidding me? Evolving a world was the work of a supreme expert. No matter how monstrous this young man was, how could he have comprehended such a great power? Okay, Ling Xiao did not hesitate at all. He threw the blood pearl in his hand to Gui Wupa. The pearl had already recognized him as its master, and his spirit was far stronger than this ghost. So how could he easily fuse with it and take it for himself? Moreover, even if his methods were heaven-defying and he really merged with the ghost pearl, what kind of storm could mere godly king cause in his domain? The only reason Gui Wupa was still alive was because his luck had yet to run out, and he had yet to trigger the reward for killing him. Keep giving him hope, and keep making him despair. This way, he could quickly play himself to death. But when he saw what Ling Xiao had done, tears welled up in Dan Lao's eyes. Although he did not know what the blood ghost pearl was, but the power it exuded was terrifying. For Gui Wupa to use it as a bargaining chip, it was obvious that this pearl was the most precious treasure in the world. But Yura did not hesitate at all and gave the pearl to Gui Wupa. Although this was a little irrational, it showed Yuer's affection for him. Yua, my beloved disciple, you did not disappoint me. Don't worry, as long as you can get through today's crisis, I will help you reach the peak of the world. Ha. Ling Xiao, I didn't expect you to be so sentimental, even though you are a demon. What a deep relationship between master and disciple. I'm almost moved to tears. Gui Wupa held the bloodthirsty ghost pearl in one hand, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. He truly did not think that this Ling Xiao's mind was actually so simple, actually really returning the sane orb to him. It was the will of heaven. It was the will of heaven. In the end, you are just a large and sturdy stepping stone on my path to immortality. But, just as Gui Wupa finished speaking, his face suddenly froze. Especially when he saw the indifference on Ling Xiao's face. He felt an indescribable chill in his heart. Fuse for me. Gui Wupa looked down at the blood pearl in his hand and frowned. F***CK. Why was the soul consciousness in this pearl more terrifying than his own? This was not logical. Chapter 490. Looks like my pearl doesn't want to acknowledge you as its master. Ling Xiao smiled. His handsome face had a hint of mockery. Seeing the anxious look on Gui Wupu's face, Dan Lao's eyes suddenly flashed with understanding. It was obvious that Ling Xiao had placed a trap in the pearl. Gui Wupu had miscalculated, as expected of my beloved disciple. His thought process was meticulous. In cultivation, talent was important, but temperament was even more precious. If one had talent, but no temperament, they would not achieve much. Who would have thought? In just 3 years, my disciple has become so wise. Ling Xiao, are you mistaken? Your master is still in my hands. How dare you play tricks on me? Gui Wupu glared at Ling Xiao. He couldn't do it. How could a human divine, overlord soul consciousness be so terrifying that even he could not erase it? Play tricks? You think too highly of yourself. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He turned to look at Dan Lao's side. There, 2 figures gradually appeared. It was Xing Shun and Huahong. Both of them were close to the 5th rank. In the realm, Ling Xiao wanted to conceal their auras. Even a 6th or 7th rank God Emperor would not be able to detect them easily. Hence, when he saw the two emperor gods who seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. Gue Wupo's face instantly turned fearful. God, Emperor? How could this be? Where did these two people come from? Moreover, judging from their expressions, they seemed to be in cahoots with Ling Xiao. Greetings, my lord. Just as Gue Wupu's heart was filled with fear, Xing Shun and Hua Heng suddenly bowed down. Instantly, the fear on his face intensified. My lord, these two god emperors called Ling Xiao their lord? Since when did the great Qin Empire have such a good-looking god emperor? Holy shit, is the heavenly Tao messing with me? Why did it give me so many opportunities, but now I'm in such a dire situation? Not to mention the god emperors, he probably couldn't even defeat Ling Xiao now. Beep, the Tao heart of the Child of Destiny has been shattered. Congratulations to host for plundering 400 luck points and 4,000 villain points. The Child of Destiny has already lost his fate. If you kill him now, you will receive additional rewards. Suddenly, Gue Wupu turned around and tried to escape. But before he could even take a step forward, Ling Xiao's figure had already appeared in front of him. The soul force that flickered in his eyes almost scared Gue Wupu to death on the spot. The soul might of a god emperor. How is this possible? Wait, the soul-sucking sacred orb and the soul of a god emperor. Could this young man be the reincarnation of Xia Chun? Gulp. Gue Wupu's heart trembled as he raised his head to look at the divine soul handprint that covered the heavens and earth. His eyes widened. Truth be told, it was only because his physical body had been destroyed that he would be pissing his pants right now. Even so, Gue Wupu's body was still trembling and his spiritual soul was in turmoil. He didn't even dare to think about resisting. Wait, just as the divine soul handprint gradually solidified, Gue Wupu suddenly roared and looked up at the young man in midair. Young Master Ling Xiao, I'm willing to submit. As long as you spare my life, I'll tell you a great secret. A great secret? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, a hint of a smile in his eyes. You're bragging. What secret in this world is more important than my identity as the Sky Demon? Buzz. The divine soul handprint buzzed, and the heavens and earth instantly collapsed. Streaks of spatial cracks spread for thousands of miles, shattering the heavens and earth. I can help you awaken the sacred orb's soul and restore its power. Seeing that the divine soul handprint was about to land, Gue Wupu gritted his teeth and roared. Oh, awaken the sacred orb's soul? Ling Xiao's expression froze. This condition was quite tempting. The grade of this spirit orb was obviously beyond the scope of this world. If it could be restored, it would be a great treasure. That's right. While I was raped, cough cough, I was killed by a righteous and handsome demon of the human race. This spirit orb automatically protected its master. Its soul was shattered, and I fused a part of it into my divine soul. Give me some time, and I'll be able to extract it and store it in this spirit orb. Oh, I see. Ling Xiao nodded, obviously tempted. No wonder the spirit orb's power did not work on Gue Wupu. It turned out that his divine soul had fused with a part of the spirit orb. Master, as long as the spirit orb is awakened, you can kill anyone below the God Emperor realm. Seeing Ling Xiao's silence, Gue Wupu's eyes flashed with hope. As long as he could survive, he would have a chance to rise again. When the time came, he would find a secluded place to cultivate in peace. With his talent, he would not have to worry about not becoming a God Emperor. But just as he finished speaking, he saw the young man shake his head slightly. How could I trouble Master Wupu? Wouldn't it be easier for me to send you directly into the spirit orb? F***CK. The smile on Gue Wupu's face froze before it disappeared. Oh no, it felt like he was digging his own grave. Master Wupu, do you want to do it yourself? Or do you want me to erase your consciousness and send it into the spirit orb? Ling Xiao smiled faintly and clenched his fist in the air. The heaven-covering soul palm instantly pierced through the void and fell on Gue Wupu's head. I'll do it myself. Gue Wupu screamed in despair. Finally, a look of reluctance flashed in his eyes. He turned into a dazzling soul light and entered the spirit orb. Buzz! Suddenly, the heavens and earth buzzed, and the sound of Tao reverberated. An indescribably terrifying aura spread out, covering hundreds of miles of the forest. The spirit orb shone with a bloody light, as if there were thousands of ghosts roaring. The plants withered instantly. Even Xing Shun and Xing Wupu had a look of intense fear in their eyes. It is indeed an item from the upper world, the treasure of the ghost clan. This power is indeed heaven-defying. Ling Xiao looked indifferent and waved his hand gently. The spirit orb suddenly pierced through the sky and embedded itself in the void. He did not manage to kill Gue Wupu to obtain the final reward. Now that he had merged with the orb, Ling Xiao could destroy his soul with a single thought. The spirit orb was of great use to him now, but who knew if he would obtain a more powerful treasure in the future? When that time came, he would still be able to obtain the system's reward by killing Gue Wupu. There were many children of destiny, but there was only one spirit orb. Poor Gue Wupu, who had pretended to be a pig for 30 years, finally achieved his wish and became a complete orb. More importantly, Gue Wupu's memories and consciousness were now under Ling Xiao's control. The Dark Inyama scripture? The third successor of the Ghost Clan? Interesting. As Gue Wupu's soul was transformed, the spirit pillar soul lock that was originally restraining Dan Lao also disappeared. On the peak of the mountain, Dan Lao looked at the tall figure of the young man, not far away, with a complicated expression. Tears flowed from his eyes, but the corners of his mouth curled up into a gratified smile. My good disciple, you really are Shizuan's little pride? The aura of freedom is so good. Dan Lao looked up and took a deep breath, his face full of satisfaction. Although his physical body was broken, with his attainments in alchemy, he only needed some time to gather the spiritual materials to refine pills and rebuild his physical body. When that time came, he would still be the respected alchemy master who was respected by everyone. Shijiang, your Emperor Shi has returned. Chapter 491. Dan Lao. Ling Xiao descended from the sky and stood in front of Dan Lao. The domineering look on Dan Lao's face made him want to laugh. It was very obvious that this alchemy Tao God Emperor was most likely dreaming right now. Regaining freedom? Being respected? That's impossible. If you fall into my hands, Ling Xiao, you'll be a pill slave at most. You'll be the kind of tool that can't be refined to death and will be refined to death. You are... Dan Lao frowned and looked at Ling Xiao with surprise. Dan Lao? Sure enough, after 3 years, their relationship had become distant. However, looking at Yu Er's current strength and background, he had probably returned to the Great Qin Empire to inherit the throne. At his age, he naturally valued his reputation. Now that he was just a soul, he was tortured to a pulp by Gue Wupu. In front of the 2 God Emperors, he did lose his dignity as a teacher. Yu Er, I understand you. Not to mention Dan Lao. Even if you call me Alchemy Emperor Shi, I won't blame you. You are now the Emperor of the Great Qin Empire, above everyone. What I want to do is to stand behind you silently and help you conquer the western border and unify the Great Qin Empire. Gue Wupu's methods were terrifying. Although I killed him, but Ling Xiao smiled guiltily and stopped talking. It was time to show off his real skills. As for Pill Elder, he was somewhat puzzled as he stared at the disciple before him. Needless to say, the current Yu had changed quite a bit. At such a close distance, there was no trace of the past. However, his appearance had changed, most likely to hide his identity. However, the spiritual fire fluctuation on his body and the stone ring on his finger were all correct. Just now, he was so determined to save his own life. Besides my Yu who else would be so filial? You? What is it that you can't tell me? Dan Lao, Gue Wupu is an evil demon, and his thoughts are unpredictable. You were imprisoned by him for so long. Haha, you can understand, right? I want to check your soul see, in case. Ling Xiao looked embarrassed, and there was even a hint of guilt in his eyes. Although he didn't know why Gue Wupa hadn't placed a soul seal on Pill Elder, It was most likely because of the old man's unusual soul sea. Of course, if you don't want to, or don't trust me, then forget it. How could I not believe you? Your cautiousness and magnanimity make me very gratified. Pill Elder shook his head and smiled. His eyes were full of smiles. You've really grown up. As an emperor, he should be prepared for this. The path to becoming an emperor was filled with dangers and obstacles. If one was not careful, they could be killed and consigned to eternal damnation. Especially now that your cultivation is still low, I'm afraid that there are many people who covet the position of 9 and 5. In Pill Elder's opinion, Ling Zhao's request was not only reasonable, but also showed that he had become increasingly mature and steady in the past 3 years. Regardless of whether it was the imperial lord of a dynasty or a peerless genius, they should all be aware of this. I think highly of you. Come on. I'm ready. Pill Elder smiled warmly and removed the seal on his soul sea. He looked lovingly at Ling Zhao. The latter no longer hesitated. The soul light in his eyes suddenly shone brightly and directly entered his soul sea. It was unobstructed. In order to avoid the backlash of his divine soul, Pill Elder tried his best to suppress the power of his divine soul, until a wisp of soul light suddenly shone brightly and turned into a small seal. It dissipated in his soul sea. Only then did Pill Elder's face reveal a faint trace of doubt. What the F***CK? That fluctuation just now, why was it a little strange? Also, what was with this inexplicable feeling in his soul sea? At this moment, this alchemy expert seemed to have an illusion. It seemed like he was unknowingly being controlled by someone. Could it be impossible? How could it be? Or was really controlled by the devil flame and turned into an evil spirit? Pill Elder, the 7th grade medicinal pill you refined is to my liking. I suggest you help me refine it to death. Of course, with me here, it will be difficult for you to die even if you want to. Ling Zhao smiled indifferently and raised his head to look at the distant sky. Let's go. I'll take you to see my spiritual garden. Yes. Pill Elder's eyes flashed. Although there were many doubts in his heart, he still said, Master, so it was I who harmed you. If I didn't seal the devil flame in your body, how could you become an evil spirit today? The soul seal technique is evil and treacherous. It's definitely not something a righteous person can control. But yesterday's cause, today's effect. In the end, it was he, Pill Emperor Sure, who silently bore everything. He was enslaved by his disciple. Although you've become an evil spirit now, I don't blame you at all. Because the law of this world is that the strong are respected. So what if you've become an evil spirit? As long as you can stand at the top of the world, you won't let me down. The two figures descended from the sky and saw Han Zhan and the others each holding a medicinal cauldron. They were refining pills with their eyes closed. Pill Elder frowned slightly and said coldly, Nonsense. How can you refine the soul-gathering pill like this? Hearing the voice, the group of Medicinal Hall's disciples suddenly opened their eyes in a daze. They were all listless and their expressions were slack. It was obvious that they had reached the limit of their energy. Greetings, Master. Han Zhan got up in a hurry and bowed to Ling Zhao. However, the latter merely glanced at him with an indifferent expression, then pointed at Pill Elder. This is the Pill Emperor of the Western Border. In the future, he will be in charge of alchemy. You only need to plant the medicinal ingredients. You don't need to interfere with anything else. Pill Emperor of Western Border? Could it be? Pill Emperor Sure. Hearing this, the group of Western Border's geniuses were stunned. Then, it turned into shock. Master is awesome. Looking at the Pill Emperor's appearance, it was obvious that he had submitted. However, with his status in Western Border, even the emperor of a dynasty had to bow to him. When had they ever seen him so humble? Very suddenly, the trace of unwillingness in Han Zhan's heart quietly dissipated. He was originally a young man in the mountains. He had no talent and no foundation. Occasionally, he would get a celestial tablet and embark on the path of cultivation. Although the celestial tablet's divine power was domineering, The prerequisite was that one had to have spiritual materials to make use of it. In the past, Hanjan could only find some ginseng and Ganoderma in the mountains and use the celestial tablet to catalyze the consumption. However, ever since he followed Ling Xiao, he finally understood what spiritual materials were and what a foundation was. In just a few months, his cultivation had entered the middle stage of the Pong stage. In the past, he would not have dared to imagine such a speed. Although Han Zhan now had less freedom, he still had to cultivate. He was forced by his master to plant medicinal herbs and refine pills in the immortal-seeking sect. He could only secretly cultivate at night. Then, he suddenly felt relieved. Following Master Ling Xiao, he no longer had to take many detours and worry about spiritual materials. Wasn't it happy to plant medicinal herbs, refine pills, and cultivate every day? One day, when Master stands proudly at the top of the world, I, Han Zhan, will also be a person beside him. At that time, I will be second only to Master and above thousands of people. What else can I ask for? Buffed. Although the mortal model was tenacious and had a calm personality, he still lacked some domineering aura. In other words, Ling Xiao's current image in his eyes was simply too lofty. Those who had never seen a real dragon were in awe of a flood dragon. How could they not be willing to submit when they saw a dragon tamer for the first time? The strong were revered. You should laugh at me for being a bootlicker. Life is like a dream, and dreams are like life. Chapter 492. Beep. The destined child is sincerely convinced by the villain. Congratulations to the host for plundering 200 luck points and 2,000 villain points. Hearing the system's notification, Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes and looked at Han Zhan meaningfully. He was the only one here who could be called the destined child, although most of his luck had already been plundered by Ling Xiao. The soul seal in his soul, he had also cut off his immortal fate. But as long as he could sincerely submit, the soul seal and whatnot could be taken away at will. At that time, he would have luck and be loyal to Ling Xiao. Wouldn't it be better for him to be a tool? Taming them required a process, especially for the protagonists of heaven and earth. No matter how short-sighted they were, they still had their pride. But I, Ling Xiao, am the greatest light of the world. I am righteous and invincible. Ha ha ha. I believe that as long as they are given time, they will be moved by my unique charisma. Pill Elder, you are an alchemy expert. You can use the spiritual materials here as you wish. Also, I have some spiritual materials here. They might be of great use to you in recovering your physical body. Ling Xiao handed Pill Elder a cosmos bag. Inside were all the elixir materials needed to reconstruct the physical body. When Nether recovered her physical body, she relied on an elixir refined by the moon of Xinyuan. Since Pill Elder was famous in Shijiang, his alchemy skills might not be below the moon of Xinyuan. It shouldn't be a big problem to recover her physical body. This is Pill Elder opened the cosmos bag and looked at the dazzling array of rare materials. His eyes narrowed. In the blink of an eye, a smile appeared on his old face. As expected, the devil flame might turn you into a demon, but in his heart, he still cares about me, his master. Every spiritual material in this cosmos sack could be said to be precious. Even in Shijiang, finding all of these spiritual materials is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. He gave them to me so easily. There wasn't a trace of hesitation or reluctance. Tears gradually blurred his eyes. Pill Elder took a deep breath and smiled gently at Ling Xiao. Don't worry, Master. With me here, the medicine hall will definitely become the most prosperous pill sect in the western frontier. Besides refining pills, I will teach them ancient pill techniques and recipes so that they can all assume responsibility. Even now, Pill Elder had no idea that this realm had been created by Ling Xiao. In other words, in a barren land like the Shangzhou continent, no one had the divine power to create a domain. Ling Xiao nodded with a smile before he turned around and headed towards the Sky Hall. Pucci, another one, was touched. Ling Xiao was obviously doing this to help Dan Lao recover his strength. After all, only a 5th stage God Emperor Pill Emperor could unleash his most scorching light of life. Big brother. Ning Er's shouts could be heard from afar. Ling Zhao's figure descended from the sky and hugged the little girl who was flying towards him. The next moment, his eyes narrowed. Ning Er's cultivation had reached the late stage of Paoong, which was even more exaggerated than Han Zhan's. Most importantly, her providence had increased to 2,000 points. Big brother, where have you been these days? Why haven't you come back to see me? Ning Er looked up at Ling Xiao and complained with a pout. Sister Qinchan left, so you don't want to come back? Of course not. I have some things to do these days. Stay here and cultivate obediently. Don't you have Sister Feng Ling to accompany you? Ling Xiao smiled bitterly and looked in the direction of the Sky Hall. He saw Feng Ling, who was dressed in black, sitting on the roof of the hall and coldly glancing at him. Ling Xiao didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that Feng Ling seemed to have grown a little. Although it wasn't obvious, there were indeed some changes. Fortunately, little ancestor Feng Ling is here to play with me. Otherwise, I would have been bored to death. Play? Have you been playing for the past few days? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows and said with a surprised tone, Damn, you mean to say that while you were playing around, your cultivation base broke through a major realm? Yes, big brother. Little ancestor brought me to many places. We ate and played at the same time. We had a lot of fun. Ning smiled brightly, and her eyes were pure and clear. Ling Xiao had some guesses in his heart. Feng Ling probably didn't take her to eat ordinary delicacies. It was most likely immortal materials from his spirit garden. With Han Zhan around, there would definitely be an endless supply of spiritual herbs and immortal gold. However, that immortal tablet was domineering, but Han Zhan's strength was not enough. It took time for these spiritual herbs to grow. It seemed that when he had time, he had to care more about Han Zhan and ask him to work harder. If he wanted a horse to run faster, of course, he couldn't give the horse grass. He had to give him medicine. Don't just play on a daily basis. Cultivate well. Ling Xiao rubbed Ning Er's hair and turned to look at Feng Ling. Can't you teach her some powerful cultivation techniques? How do you know I didn't teach her? Feng Ling looked at Ling Xiao coldly with a proud and cold expression. It was as if she had to maintain this dignity in front of Ning Er. Ning Er, follow your big sister Feng Ling and cultivate well. She's very powerful. Ling Xiao ignored Feng Ling. This girl had a strange temper and a changeable personality, but she didn't have a bad heart. With her accompanying Ning Er, Ling Xiao was relieved. Big brother, don't worry. Ning Er will definitely work hard. Little ancestor said that big brother is a great devil. If I want to follow big brother, I have to be ruthless and kill a lot of people. Ning is working hard. Ning nodded seriously, but when he heard what she said, Ling Xiao almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Damn, I knew it. If she follows Feng Ling, this little girl will learn bad things sooner or later. Ning actually doesn't need to learn these things. As long as you cultivate well, your cultivation is strong enough to protect yourself. Ling Xiao smiled awkwardly, but Ning shook her head seriously. Little ancestor also said that big brother will kill useless burdens. Woo-woo, I don't want to be a burden. Ning suddenly burst into tears. She looked miserable. Obviously, she had suffered a lot these days by Feng Ling's side. Can you stop scaring her? Ling Xiao frowned and turned to look at Feng Ling. Am I wrong? Feng Ling snorted coldly, and a rare look of embarrassment flashed across her little face. She probably didn't expect that Ning would tell Ling Xiao everything she said. Ning big brother won't hurt you. Don't worry. Ling Xiao's lips curled into a smile. In the end, he didn't argue with Feng Ling and disappeared on the spot. What a joke. Isn't it a pleasure to keep such a cute little green plum by my side and raise her? Although I'm not the destined protagonist, can I enjoy the same treatment as them? According to the plot, a female protagonist like Ning who is supposed to be the destined child, will definitely awaken an extremely strong innate Tao law in the future. Besides, if I raise her until she's 18, she won't eat much of my rice. Am I Ling Xiao? Such a petty person. Chapter 493. In front of a palace in the north of the realm, Ling Zhao's figure appeared out of thin air. Dozens of figures rushed over from all directions and stood respectfully. At this moment, they stood before Ling Xiao with indifferent expressions like statues, and they didn't make the slightest sound. Head to southern border and find opportunities with your own strength. Join a force and wait for my orders. As soon as he finished speaking, the 60 young geniuses bowed and followed Ling Xiao, disappearing on the spot. Ling Xiao had never been to southern border before, but it was said that this was the endless sea realm. Although there were humans living here, most of them were barbarians and did not cultivate the Tao path. Instead, they cultivated some evil gu arts. Of course, the true rulers of southern border were the flood dragon humans and the sea tribe. Some of the sea tribe had the bloodline of the desolate era and had a long history. However, they could not leave the endless sea realm for too long. Otherwise, the current master of Shenzhou might not be a human. Of course, although there were countless treasures in the endless sea realm, it was too risky for humans. Therefore, the Saint's control over southern border was relatively loose. It was clear how dangerous this place was. These 60 dark guards were all taught by Folded Shadow and were extremely talented. Some of them even had providence and were good at concealment and assassination techniques. If they entered southern border first, as long as 3 to 5 of them were able to gain a foothold, they would be of great help to Ling Xiao. Even if they all died in southern border, he could just find another batch to train. It would not be a loss. Moreover, since the Saint was wary of southern border, there must be some powerful experts there. From Han Qingqiu and Nine Nether, Ling Xiao already knew that the Saint had been hunting prodigies with Tao laws for the past 100 years. There were many foreign races in southern border, and they were not controlled by the Saint. There might be some thriving leaks among them. Whether or not I go is one thing, but as a villain, you have to be watertight and prepare for a rainy day. Most importantly, these 60 dark guards were not directly controlled by Ling Xiao. There was no soul seal in their soul seas, so there was no risk of them being exposed. However, a wisp of their divine consciousness was in the hands of Folded Shadow, so there was no possibility of them betraying him. In that case, southern border could be plotted. Great Qin Imperial Palace, in front of the main hall. Dressed in an imperial robe, Qin Wushuang stood with his hands behind his back. 7 days. 7 whole days. She stood in front of the palace and looked at the sky as if she was waiting for someone. Behind him, Hu Yin, Yin Zheng, and Xiao Beifa stood silently. Even further away, countless imperial army guards gripped their sabers and waited. Monarch, we can't wait any longer. If we wait any longer, young Master Soulless Corpse is going to stink. Hu Yin sighed, a hint of worry in his aged eyes. On that day, Ling Xiao and the evil spirit disappeared at the same time and never appeared again. Although the 3 of them had killed 3 soul slaves, but to be able to enslave the 3 emperors, just how powerful was the evil demon? Ling Xiao was gifted and could even see the strangeness of the cat beast at a glance. But in the end, he was only a 17-year-old boy. His cultivation was at most in the divine general realm. How could he possibly be a match for that demon? Qin Wushuang gave a light sigh. After a few days, his beautiful face was already showing signs of fatigue. On that day, she saw her father's soul being refined into a soul slave with her own eyes. But after all, it had been 10 years since her father died. The grief and indignation in her heart were real, but it was no longer intense. In this world, there is nothing more devastating than a sudden loss. Qin Wushuang had experienced it once, but at that time, Soulless was still young. She shouldered the responsibility and did not dare to commit suicide. Unexpectedly, 10 years later, she experienced it again. Qin Wushuang had a complicated feeling about Ling Xiao, from the initial vigilance to the subsequent dependence. Every word of that boy seemed to contain sunlight that warmed the bottom of one's heart. Even Qin Wushuang truly thought that after conquering the western border and helping Soulless ascend to the throne, she would marry Ling Xiao, put down the country, put down the hatred, and live a peaceful life. In the blink of an eye, all hope turned into disappointment. She lost the only Shenyang in her heart again. The entire world was in darkness. Very tired. Monarch, bury him. Finally, a drop of tear fell from the corner of Qin Wushuang's eyes. His white hair appeared even more desolate. How could she not know the terror of that demon? Most likely, Ling Xiao had met with disaster this time. However, she was unwilling to believe it, or did not dare to believe it. It was because once her last hope was shattered, her Tao heart would be completely shattered. Before killing the demon, she did not dare to die. Ling Xiao, are you really not coming back? You said that you would conquer the western border and become my dowry. Could be you lied to me? Qin Wushuang slowly closed her eyes and revealed a sad, yet beautiful face. Only, just when the last ray of light was about to disappear from her eyes, a figure suddenly appeared in the sky, tall and handsome, floating like an immortal. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang smiled bitterly. In the past, she only heard about it, thought about it, and saw it in her dreams. Unexpectedly, Qin Wushuang, would also fall ill from missing someone. Dragon Master. However, before she could grieve for too long, suddenly, Xiao Beifa's voice emerged from behind her. The sadness on Qin Wushuang's pretty face had almost instantly disappeared. When she opened her eyes, she happened to see a pair of warm eyes looking down at her. When their eyes met, Qin Wushuang could not help but raise the corner of her mouth. Ling Xiao, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Ling Xiao's figure dropped from the sky and stood before Qin Wushuang. He extended his hand to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes. I knew it. I knew you would not fall so easily. At this moment, Qin Wushuang no longer cared about the majesty of the emperor. She threw herself into Ling Xiao's embrace and cried out loud. That demon is treacherous and spent some effort. Am I not back now? Ling Xiao shook his head and sighed bitterly. His voice became even gentler, but a trace of playfulness flashed across his eyes. It seemed he could exercise happily again. Ever since Yi Qingchan had left, he had not exercised for a long time. As the saying goes, life depends on exercise. For my physical and mental health, I have decided to exercise for the entire night. Qin Wushuang nodded helplessly and did not open her mouth again. She hugged Ling Xiao tightly, as if she was afraid he would disappear into thin air. The demon has been killed. Wushuang, shouldn't you thank me properly? Qin Wushuang's beautiful eyes slightly froze, especially that trace of greed in Ling Xiao's eyes. It made her feel inexplicably panicked. Initially, she had said that as long as Ling Xiao found the demon and took revenge for her father, she would repay him with her body. But now, she did not think it would be this simple. However, since she had made a promise, wasn't it a debt? Although I, Qin Wushuang, am cold and heartless, I hate people who go back on their words the most. I will do as you say. Okay. Ling Xiao smiled lightly and walked towards the direction of the main palace with Qin Wushuang in his arms. Behind the two, Hu Yin and Yin Zheng looked at each other with a bitter expression. Emperor, your little brother is about to stink. Do you want to take care of the business first and then do other things? Do things. Chapter 494. General Xiao. Mr. Wupa's corpse. Hu Yin sighed and turned to look at Xiao Beifa. In truth, although Qin Wushuang was the emperor of the great Qin Empire, the one who truly controlled his life and death was still this loyal general. Oh, dig a hole and bury him, Xiao Beifa said indifferently and turned to leave. He did not know how Qin Wupa died. But that day, this emperor's brother did invite Ling Xiao to the palace for a banquet, and the latter also went. Then, there was a sudden change in the imperial palace, the appearance of demons, and Qin Wupa died mysteriously. Xiao Beifa naturally did not believe that this matter had nothing to do with his master. Of course, if his master did this, it would inevitably make Qin Wushuang unhappy. A mature subordinate should take all the blame for his master. A mature and intelligent subordinate should find someone to take all the blame for his master. Dig a hole? Bury it? Hu Yan's eyes narrowed, and a trace of regret appeared in his heart. Why did I talk so much? You said to dig a hole and bury it. Should I bury it or not? If I don't bury it, I will offend Xiao Beifa. Let's bury her. When the emperor asks, will she bury me together with her? I am only a heavenly official. When I have nothing to do, I look at the stars and calculate the fate of the empire. I have no real power. These two, I can't afford to offend either of them. Pa! Suddenly, Huyin stretched out his hand and slapped himself. And when he felt Xiao Beifa's slightly sinister gaze, he immediately laughed. Ha ha! Since the general said to bury it, then I will bury it. Back palace of the great Qin Empire. Ling Xiao hugged Qin Wushuang and walked into the bedroom, his eyes full of gentleness. But at this moment, he was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he looked at Qin Wushuang seriously and said, Wushuang, I have something that I don't know if I should tell you. It's about Whooper, right? Qin Wushuang sighed, and a trace of sadness flashed across her face. Ever since her father died and the Jinan mansion was massacred, she had always treated Qin Wupa as her only hope. But now, Qin Wupa's death did not make her too sad. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, but he had some guesses in his heart. With Qin Wushuang's intelligence, most likely he had already imagined many things. What he needed to do was to give her a logical excuse so that she could completely untie the knot in her heart. That's right, Wushuang, you should have guessed it, right? Actually, I have no soul. I've been controlled by that demon for a long time. Before Ling Xiao had finished speaking, Qin Wushuang had already said with a bitter smile. Although there were tears in her eyes, they were not as sorrowful as before. That's right, Qin Wushuang had already guessed it. Ever since Ling Xiao had told her that the most dangerous place was the safest place, she had already started to suspect Qin Wupa from the bottom of her heart. Her younger brother had never left her side since he was young. So where did he pick up such a strange sorcery? Furthermore, when Qin Wupa died outside the main hall, he had inexplicably called out Ling Xiao's name before he died. No matter how he looked at it, it seemed like a conspiracy. Since that demon could control her father and the Qin emperor, how could he not control her and her brother? And during the great change in the Qin palace, all the traitors were easily exposed and killed by the blood guards led by Xiao Beifa. In the end, she was the one who benefited. What did he mean by unifying the western border could help him prolong his life? That demon saw his weakness and deliberately lured him in. And he only needed to hide in the dark to enjoy all the glory. Now that he thought about it, Qin Wushuang suddenly felt that he was very foolish and naive at that time. She actually believed in such a crooked theory. However, fortunately, she met Ling Xiao and took off that demon's mask. Or else, when he thought about how the western border would fall into the hands of a demon, Qin Wushuang felt chills all over his body. In the end, although she was cold and arrogant, she was not evil in her heart. Thus, she could not be a sinner who would go down in history with infamy. Ah, it's my fault that I didn't come back earlier and cause you to support the great Qin Empire alone. But Wushuang, don't worry, with me around, you don't need to shoulder the burden of the common people. Ling Xiao reached out and gently pressed Qin Wushuang's head on his shoulder. Then, he gently stroked her hair. Ling Xiao, one day, will I lose you like I lost them? Qin Wushuang's voice was somewhat tired. Her entire body was limp in Ling Xiao's arms. The western border is not the end of my immortal path, so I will probably go to a wider world. Wushuang, I can't promise you anything, but I will give the entire western border to you. Ling Xiao raised the corner of his mouth into a smile. However, he did not hide the gloominess in his eyes. In fact, at this time, he was confident that he could make Qin Wushuang open her soul and plant a soul mark. But once he did that, Qin Wushuang would become his slave and leave his mark in her soul. A woman without luck will only affect my path to the peak of the world and increase the risk of my demon body being exposed. I, Ling Xiao, yearn for freedom and freedom. I also yearn for the words in Mr. G. Xinlin's diary. In this life, I only hope that, therefore, Qin Wushuang would probably only be a beautiful scenery and a good time on the road. When the western border is unified, she will be the empress. She will chant my real name and help me with the power of will. At that time, Even if the people of the Holy Sect noticed the change in the western border and sent people here, they would not be able to find any clues about the demon from Qin Wushuang. As for Emperor Xia, haha, do you think I will let the descendants of Emperor Xia enjoy glory? Childish. As long as Qin Wushuang successfully took the throne of the western border, Emperor Xia would have exhausted his last bit of light and heat and could be killed at any time. I know. I will guard your territory well and wait for your return. Qin Wushuang slowly closed her eyes and hugged Ling Xiao tightly with her jade-like hands. Her ears turned red. Wushuang, seeing that the time was almost ripe, a trace of evil flashed across Ling Xiao's eyes. He took the initiative to carry Qin Wushuang and walked to the bed on the side. At this time, Qin Wushuang only closed her eyes and pursed her red lips. She was obviously nervous. You are so beautiful, their lips touched. Qin Wushuang's delicate body trembled slightly, but she did not have any intention to resist. Suddenly, the entire bedroom was overflowing with spring. Accompanied by the sound of clothes falling to the ground, a slender, well-proportioned, and perfect body suddenly appeared in front of Ling Xiao. Throughout the night, the room was filled with thunderous applause, and it did not stop. One had to admit that the body of a god emperor was strong and durable. It was far from what a divine general could compare to. Even so, after repeated this, Qin Wushuang still painfully begged for mercy. Her eyes were full of sorrow. It was only when the red sun shone from the sky that the two fell asleep in each other's arms. Boom! Night fell. Suddenly, a loud sound came from the entire Great Qin Imperial Palace. Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed slightly. The starry robe condensed on his body. In a flash, he appeared outside the main hall. In the next moment, his eyes narrowed. At this time, in a night sky that was tens of thousands of miles away, a divine pillar connected the heavens and the earth. The silver light on it was vast and boundless. It was as if the Milky Way had descended to the world and evolved into many divine palaces. It was like a celestial miracle. Even though they were tens of thousands of miles away, Ling Xiao could hear the sound of Tao ringing in his ears. It was leisurely and ethereal, making his heart feel empty. Chapter 495. The Cold Moon Celestial Palace has appeared. Qin Wushuang's figure appeared behind Ling Xiao unknowingly. At this moment, she was not wearing an emperor's robe. She was only wrapped in a cotton blanket, revealing a pair of straight, white, and slender legs. The night wind blew her silver hair, making her look like a dream. Her eyelashes trembled slightly on her long, narrow, and tired, beautiful eyes. However, there was a trace of sadness on her picturesque face. "Oh, right. A few days ago, when you were not here, someone sent a Chinquin bag and said, 'Miss Su Yin misses you very much.'" Qin Wushuang suddenly reached out and took out a Chinquin bag from her ring. She handed it to Ling Xiao with a trace of vigilance in her eyes. "Su Yin, this name is very familiar. Is it the one from the Cloud Alliance?" "Yes, the night is cold. Let's go in." Ling Xiao smiled lightly and did not explain. He carried Qin Wushuang in his arms and walked towards the palace. With Qin Wushuang's temperament, she would not argue with him over this matter. Moreover, she already knew that Ling Xiao would not stay in the western border for long. Under the moonlight, Qin Wushuang's beautiful face became even more white and moving. Only the tears in her starry eyes added a trace of sadness. "Ling Xiao, do you want to go?" The Cold Moon Celestial Palace. Qin Wushuang suddenly opened her mouth and looked at Ling Xiao with shining eyes. "Yes." Ling Xiao nodded. One could not tell whether he was happy or sad. Originally, according to Han Qingxiu's words, this celestial palace should appear after a year. And with Ling Xiao's current strength, 1 year was enough for him to conquer the remaining 4 dynasties and unify the western border. Unexpectedly, this celestial palace appeared at this time. Of course, no matter when it appeared, Ling Xiao would not miss it, even if he had already guessed what the good fortune to become an immortal was. But Xia Feng spent so much effort to enter this celestial palace. There must be a secret that he longed for. With this treasure-seeking beast paving the way, it naturally saved Ling Xiao a lot of trouble. Moreover, judging from the momentum of the appearance of the immortals, it was likely that all the talented geniuses in the western frontier would be there. A wave of leaks was already on the way. Ding dong. Warm reminder. Lord Ling Xiao, your express delivery will be delivered immediately. As for unifying the western border, now, Qin Wushuang had already surrendered. With Ning Tiance, Xiao Beifa leading the army, Qiao Yunli, Hu Yin, and the others assisting from the side. Who in the Shijiang dynasty could stop him? It was just a matter of time. Oh, I can't go to the celestial world. The Cold Moon Celestial Palace has a rule that only geniuses below the godly king realm are allowed to enter. Besides, there's a sealing force there. The higher one's cultivation level is, the stronger the backlash. Once you enter, your cultivation level will be suppressed to the divine general layer. Qin Wushuang furrowed her brow slightly as she felt worried. Ling Xiao was very strong, but once he entered, the stronger his cultivation was, the greater the sealing power he had to bear. Besides, now that he was famous, the remaining 4 dynasties most likely saw him as a thorn in their side. Once they had the chance to kill him, they would not hesitate. It was said that the great Yuan dynasty had a heavenly mandate goddess. Her Tao heart was pure, and she had great ambitions. Since the day she was born, the 9 heavens divine palace had appeared. She had the protection of the immortal shadow, and her cultivation level was terrifying. Secretly, many people guessed that in this trip to the Cold Moon celestial realm, this woman would receive the fortune of heaven and earth. She would become one of a kind in history. Needless to say, the remaining Great Chu, Great Qi, and Great Zhao dynasties all had geniuses, especially the 3rd prince of the Chu dynasty, Chu Tiansheng, who was a famous blade cultivator in the western border. He believed that there was nothing in the world that he could not kill. It was said that his blade intent had reached the mysterious realm. No divine lord elite warriors dared to compete with him. Oh, I see. However, when he heard Qin Wushuang's words, Ling Zhao's mouth curled up into a smile, suppressing one's cultivation level and causing a backlash. This kind of seal was standard for any secret realm that hid a divine treasure. Wasn't this nonsense? If the author didn't seal the secret realm, how could the destined protagonist kill his way through by chance and forcefully slap his opponent's face, obtain the treasure as a dark horse, and achieve his own success? It was unexpected, but reasonable. Although it was said to be the protection of the heavenly Tao, in fact, everyone knew. However, suppressing one's cultivation level and the backlash was great. Now, Ling Zhao's demonic body had entered the 3rd transformation level. Just based on the blood qi of his fleshly body, even Emperor God experts couldn't be compared to him. It was not too much for him to kill a few ants, right? Ling Xiao, I know I can't stop you. However, there are a few people you need to be extra careful of. Qin Wushuang's face was serious. He got up and opened the blanket. Then, he covered Ling Xiao with it. The starry robe around Qin Wushuang's body disappeared, and he pulled that beautiful body into his arms. Tell me, I'm listening. In fact, with the system, Ling Xiao did not need to worry about anyone. He only needed to look at it to know whether it was a leek or a grass. However, if he rejected the beauty's good intentions, wouldn't she be disappointed? There was a goddess in the Great Yuan dynasty called Yuan Yao. She was the princess of the Great Yuan Emperor and Empress Yuan. It was said that she cared about the people and had great ambitions. It was said that there was a drought 5 years ago in the Great Yuan dynasty. As a princess, she knelt on the altar for 49 days and prayed for rain. In the end, she changed the heaven and earth. There was a rainstorm for 17 days. Although it caused rivers to overflow and cause floods, the people respected her kindness and called her the saintess of the 9 heavens. A trace of reverence flashed across Qin Wushuang's beautiful eyes. She changed the heaven and earth and made wishes for the people. Such a person was the most benevolent and kind person. It was natural for the heavenly Tao to protect her. It was also from that day that Princess Yuan Yao gained a trace of the power of heaven and earth. It was said that it transcended the 5 elements and was independent of yin and yang. It was mysterious and unpredictable. When ghosts and demons saw it, they avoided it. Oh, Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. This leak was not ordinary. Praying for rain and causing floods? This model was most likely the white moonlight in the hearts of the people, the one who vowed to use love to change the world. That Molly, or this Yuan Yao, had a deep mind and had the desire to fight for the throne. That was why she put on such a good show to win the hearts of the people. Zhu Xiaomou, when I reached the peak of my cultivation, I could summon clouds and rain with a wave of my hand. To put it simply, I could summon a storm with a flick of my finger. Why would I need to kneel before the altar and pray to the heavens? After kneeling for 49 days, I am afraid that my knees would be black from kneeling, right? Fortunately, the women in this world did not wear shorts. Otherwise, many simple-minded and righteous people would start imagining things in their minds again. However, this action was somewhat pretentious and hypocritical. Of course, the people were stupid and believed that what they saw was what they believed. The princess prayed for rain and knelt before the heavens. In the end, she achieved her wish and changed the heaven and earth. It was indeed a good story. Interesting. Regardless of whether this princess of Great Yuan was a kind and innocent white moonlight or a shrewd Zhu Xiaomou, she was most likely a healthy leek. If she ate it, it should be very nutritious. How could I bear to blame you for being too kind? You met me too late. Princess Yuan Yao, please cherish me for the rest of your life. Ling Xiao, although this Princess Yuan Yao will not take the initiative to be your enemy, and even if she meets an enemy, she has always been tolerant and merciful. Only, Qin Wushuang wanted to say something but stopped. A trace of hesitation flashed across his beautiful eyes. This Yuan Yao was extremely beautiful. She was known as the twin beauties of the West with Han Qingqiu of the Cold Moon Immortal Palace. Therefore, naturally, she was surrounded by arrogant demons. Once Ling Xiao provoked her, he would definitely become the target of public criticism. Understand, I will keep a distance from her. How could Ling Xiao not guess Qin Wushuang's concern? He immediately smiled gently. Only, it was still too early to say whether this distance was positive or negative. Besides her, there are a few other people you need to be careful of. Chapter 496. Oh, how many more people are there? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. Not only was there no panic in his eyes, but there was also a faint hint of excitement. Damn, as expected of the era of great battles. Demons were born in troubled times. The leaks in the western border were obviously stronger than those in the eastern border. But what kind of surprise would there be in the southern border and northern border? Ling Xiao did not have a foundation in the monster race and the Sea clan, but even so, these two races and two borders were still in his chess game. With the power of the western border, he killed the barbarians of the southern border and provoked the conflict between the Sea clan and the Saint sect. As for the northern border monster race, more than a year had passed in Nine Nether. Although the two had no contact, it was not necessarily a bad thing. At the very least, she should not have encountered any dangerous setbacks. And with her identity and strength, it should not be too difficult for her to gain a foothold in the northern border monster race. The Nine Nether Down Phoenix was also a member of the monster race. Not to mention, in the 100,000 Mountains, there was still a little green plum of the Fox clan who was bitterly missing him. Moreover, Ling Xiao had a faint feeling that the first princess of the Nine-Tailed clan, Bai Jiro, was hiding a shocking secret. As for the central border, Bai Ling had now successfully planted a soul seal on the Blood Soul Temple's first Elder Qi. Even if the Blood Hall's Holy Master was terrifying, most of the spies of this mysterious sect had fallen into Ling Xiao's hands. Not moving was to avoid alerting the enemy. Not to mention, the little rich woman, Su Yin, had now sincerely submitted. With the financial support of the Cloud Alliance, who could defeat her in the Xingzhou? As for Yi Qingchan, she was just a dangerous move by Ling Xiao. If it was well played, it would be twice the result with half the effort. If it was wrong, there would not be too much loss. Step by step, it was more or less like that. What? There were too many small plots, and there was no ending? I suggest you watch the animated version of Journey to the West without using your brain. This way, you can happily watch an episode of fighting one monster, a total of 81 monsters, cultivate to become a Buddha, and end the show perfectly. Please, I'm a villain. The setting is the monsters killed in Journey to the West. Which one of them is not strong? Which one doesn't have a shocking background? What about the end? Without using his brain, how could he dominate the four borders? To be honest, it wasn't a matter of being invincible or not. No matter how invincible you were, there were still the 9 heavens and 10 worlds above you. The immemorial sky demon was invincible. Why did it fall in the end? A true villain would conceal their identity and secretly reveal their true colors. Only when they stood at the peak of the world would they be able to make immortals kneel and gods and Buddhas bow their heads. If you're invincible, why don't you just kill your way up to the 9 heavens? Why are you still cultivating? I, Ling Xiao, may be invincible in this world, but when people talk about me, they should spread my good name, not my evil body. Yes, there was a prince of the great Chu dynasty named Chu Tiancheng. He entered the Paong realm at the age of 10 and could be called a monster. However, when he was 11, he lost all his cultivation and was ridiculed by everyone. 5 years ago, he suddenly used the saber to prove his Tao and exposed his brother Chu Ming's sinister actions to the world. It turned out that his brother Chu Ming's cultivation was forcibly stolen and his meridians were destroyed. That day, there was a shocking change in the Chu palace. The two of them fought on the battle platform. In the end, Chu Tiancheng only used one saber strike and cut Chu Ming, who was already a divine general, in half. Since then, Chu Tiancheng became the legitimate crown prince of the Great Chu. He is dedicated to the pursuit of Tao and has a cold and determined personality. He is the #1 prodigy of the Western border. As the empress of the Great Qin, Qin Wushuang naturally knew the prodigies of this territory very well. This Chu Tiancheng could kill a divine general 5 years ago. His current cultivation must be even more terrifying. Besides these two, there are 2 other famous prodigies in the Western border. One of them is called Mo Wuya. He is a freelance martial artist. No one knows where his master is, and his cultivation is unknown. However, it is said that those who have seen him fight are all dead. Now, he has a close relationship with Yuan Yao. They seem to have feelings for each other. The other one is Han Qingqiu of the Cold Moon Celestial Palace. She is extremely talented. When she first entered the Cold Moon Celestial Palace, she did not have any cultivation level. However, she has already comprehended 2 laws. She is very mysterious. Qin Wushuang listed all the prodigies that could threaten Ling Xiao. Hearing this, even with Ling Xiao's temperament, tears of panic flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Damn, this western border is indeed dangerous. With so many prodigies gathered in one place, he would be very busy in this trip to the immortal land. Only, he wondered how many of these prodigies were blessed by the heavens? Or perhaps all of them were blessed by luck? Wonderful. As long as they were blessed by the heavens, they must be blessed by luck and possess terrifying cultivation. However, the most important thing was that these people all hid secrets. For example, that Chu Tiancheng, after being crippled and receiving cold treatment, he was able to rise again and kill his enemies. How could it be possible that he did not have some amazing fortune? Although now, this crown prince of the Great Chu had clearly risen and was not as easy to toy with as Lin Shi and the others, but even if he was blessed by the heavens, how could he be compared to Ling Xiao? No matter how strong an ant was, it was still an ant. He would only need to use a little more effort. He just didn't know if this chosen one had a childhood sweetheart with the other chosen one. Xia Feng, Yuan Yao, Chu Tiancheng, and Mo Tianya. Burp. He seemed to be a bit full. Ling Xiao, why are you crying? Qin Wushuang looked at the drop of crystal on Ling Xiao's cheek, and a trace of panic appeared between his brows. When I think about being separated from you for a while, I feel very depressed. Ling Xiao sighed softly and reached out to pull Qin Wushuang into his arms. A trace of grievance flashed across the latter's eyes. He He leaned his face against Ling Xiao's chest and said, "Me too, Ling Xiao. That secret realm is extremely dangerous. Only a few of the western border monsters who enter each time really come out. Moreover, it is said that there's a ferocious demon suppressed there. It will taint people with demonic qi for no reason and disturb their Tao heart. Although the secret to becoming an immortal is indeed tempting. But I know you're worried about me, Wu Shuang. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Before Qin Wu Shuang could finish speaking, Ling Xiao had already smiled and shook his head. "Since you are on the path to immortality, how can you be afraid of danger? Suppressing a demon? All right, I will kill this demon for the world." Ling Xiao sneered inwardly. "Demon? There's a demon in this world that is stronger than me? Taint by demonic qi? Disturb the Tao heart? Isn't this a coincidence? My Tao heart needs endless demonic qi to nourish it." "Then, you must be careful." Qin Wushuang knew that he could not persuade Ling Xiao, so he did not say anything more. She had an indifferent personality. Now that she had submitted to him, what she needed to do was to stand behind him and help him conquer the world. As for the danger of demonic qi, for someone as righteous as Ling Xiao, it would be difficult for him to be corroded by demonic qi. If you love him, you should believe in him. After I leave, you just stay in the imperial city. You don't need to do anything. I will order Xiao Beifa to guard the great Qin Empire. If there is an enemy, don't panic. Ning Tiance and the others will arrive at any time." Ling Xiao smiled gently. His starry eyes emitted golden light and soothed the last trace of uneasiness in Qin Wushuang's heart. Yes, a soft moan stirred up thousands of waves. Another sleepless night. Chapter 497. At the center of the western border, at the foot of the Cold Moon Mountain, there were rows of trees, a cool breeze, divine rainbows in the sky, and celestial music lingered in the air. It was a scene out of this world. At this moment, a young man in white was walking towards a golden palace at the peak of the mountain. The young man was tall and straight, and his aura was vigorous. He was a fourth-grade divine general. That's right. He was the prince of the great Xia dynasty, Xia Feng, who had joined the Cold Moon Divine Palace with a disfigured face. Ever since he was framed by Ling Xiao and branded as a demon, Xia Feng had become more low-key and steady. However, Xia Feng's face was no longer as perfunctory as before, and there was even a hint of dominance. It was not that he had suddenly changed, but under the strictness of his master, Elder Yu Xiao, his Gung Metal Dao law had become more vigorous and terrifying, which had imperceptibly changed his temperament. The Dao of Gung Metal was to press forward with indomitable will. If one wanted to complete it, he must have the ambition to compete with the heavens and earth. Moreover, after spending a month together, Xia Feng realized that Han Xinzi seemed to be paying special attention to him. Not only did she often send people to make things difficult for him, she even taught him a lesson herself sometimes. However, not only did this not make Xia Feng feel defeated, but it made him feel that it was a test, a signal. It was a different way of showing that Han Xinzi cared about him. After all, with her beauty, her Dao partner must be a young talent. She was just urging him to cultivate and testing his patience. That's right. How could such a devilish fairy like Han Qingxiu like a cowardly and patient person? Although Xia Feng had never thought that perfunctory was wrong. As long as he stood at the top of the world, everything in the past was nothing. But strangely, as long as he looked at Han Qingxiu in her deep eyes, Xia Feng would feel that he had to crush all his enemies and give her a sense of security. Qingxiu, don't worry, as long as I can kill Ling Xiao, no one in this world will be my opponent. After being reborn, Xia Feng actually had an inner demon in his heart. After all, Ling Xiao was his enemy. If he did not kill this person, his Dao heart would not be satisfied. Only by taking revenge with his own hands, he would not be able to live in peace. I, your father, am the chosen one. On both sides of the mountain path, disciples would occasionally pass by and look at him with disdain. Look, this ugly guy is preparing to look for Junior Sister Han again. Pucci, why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? You're scaring people to death. You're always thinking about good things. Exactly. If it wasn't for Marshal Ant Yu Shao, how could a new disciple like him enter the cold moon immortal realm? All the disciples had mocking expressions with a trace of envy. They raised their heads to look at the divine pillar that connected the heavens and the earth, and a trace of greed appeared in their eyes. The immortals had appeared a whole year earlier than the previous ones. According to the elders of the sect, such a phenomenon might indicate that a great fortune would appear in this trip to the immortals. However, Cold Moon Celestial Palace had always had a tradition that anyone who entered the immortals must be a disciple of the divine general level. Furthermore, they were all chosen by the various great elders. Although Xiao Feng had entered the sect late, he was already a direct disciple of Yu Shao and a genius of the Tao laws. Therefore, he had a place in the immortals' immortal realm. Of course, even so, there were still disciples in Cold Moon Celestial Palace who felt that Xiao Feng was just taking advantage of Yu Zhao's direct disciple. What bullshit genius of the Tao laws, divine general prodigy. They heard that a disciple called Feng Yi was defeated by an inner disciple who had just entered the divine general level a few days ago. Of course, Han Qingxiu was not at the scene of that battle. Otherwise, these side disciples would definitely have seen another mighty junior brother Feng Yi. There was no helping it. This was the special treatment of the Son of Destiny. He did good deeds without leaving his name, and his strength would always be underestimated. Wherever he went, he would be mocked by all kinds of side disciples. And as a side character, there was always an illusion that whatever the Chosen One could do, he could do it as well. He could do it better than the Son of Destiny. One suppressed and one raised, turning the tables and slapping the face. Have you learned it? Junior brother Feng, you gotta look for junior sister Han again. A few figures suddenly walked over from the palace. The person in the lead was dressed in a white robe embroidered with auspicious clouds. He was handsome and elegant. He was the direct disciple of the Cold Moon Palace Master, Wang Tianduo. In terms of battle strength, Wang Tianduo was actually stronger than Lu Yun. He was a 6th grade divine general. Although he had not comprehended the Tao laws, he had already cultivated the Cold Moon divine art to perfection. Of course, the reason why Lu Yun was valued by the Cold Moon Palace Master was because of his talent and understanding of alchemy. Unfortunately, the latter was currently eating immortal herbs and desperately refining pills in Ling Zhao's domain. The glory of the past was ultimately a beautiful cloud of smoke. In the Cold Moon Palace Master's line, Han Qingxiu was the successor of the Cold Moon Palace, and Wang Tianduo was the eldest senior brother of the same line. The eldest senior brother was lost, and the second senior brother was promoted. Senior brother Wang. Xiao Feng's eyes narrowed. Before Wang Tianduo could walk over, he had already bowed down. Seeing this, the ridicule on the faces of the disciples in the mountain became even more intense. Look, is this something a young monster should do? In this world, which monstrous genius didn't have a cold, arrogant, and steady appearance? But this Xiao Feng just had to go wherever he went. Only in front of Han Qingxiu did he pretend to be indifferent and calm. Hypocrite, despicable, shameless. Senior brother Wang, look at this Feng Yi. He looks like a dog. There were a few true inheritors beside Wang Tianduo. When they looked at Xiao Feng, their gazes were cold. Han Qingxiu, the dream of the 300 million young men in the western border. The bright moonlight in the eyes of the 7,000 male disciples of the Cold Moon Palace. What was this Feng Yi? Why did he receive the fairy's favor the moment he came? Although this favor was indeed a little strange. But they had to admit that even if they were humiliated by Han Qingxiu, it was still a kind of enjoyment and honor for these disciples. In the past few days, a bad trend had started to spread in the Cold Moon Palace, which was self-mutilating. A few disciples ruthlessly cut their faces and ran to Han Xiuqing to show off, but they were directly ignored by the fairy. Why? What was so special about this Feng Yi that made junior sister Han look askance? Of course, if this group of disciples knew that the honor in their eyes was just Ling Zhao's plan to kill this destined child, perhaps they would still be willing. Han Xiuqing, the dream that we cultivators strive for, The dream that we can't get, the pain that we can't touch, the sweet poison that goes deep into our bones and blood. Of course, if there wasn't a villain like Ling Xiao, this Xiaofeng wouldn't have no chance at all. As a reborn person, his luck was terrifying and he knew the rules of this world. Perhaps one day, he would also walk on the path of becoming the enemy of the holy sect. He might even save Han Qingqiu from danger in the secret realm and win the heart of the proud girl. Here, you can refer to the part where Lin Shi and Yin Qingyan got to know each other. But it was a pity that his marriage was destined to not be with him. Shut up. How can you talk to junior brother phone like that? How is this like a dog? Shouldn't a dog open its mouth and stick its tongue out? Wang Tianduo shouted coldly. There was a gloomy expression between his brows. As Han Qingqiu's senior brother, Wang Tianduo naturally admired the former for a long time. As the current eldest senior brother of the Cold Moon Palace, of course, he had to be prepared to be stepped on by junior brother Tianming. Otherwise, if you don't go up and I don't go up, how can the destined child act cool and slap the face? If he doesn't slap the face, how can he make the readers happy? Chapter 498. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Just as Wang Tianduo finished speaking, Xiaofeng in front of him suddenly made a strange sound. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw that Xiaofeng had suddenly stuck out his tongue, pretending to be a dog. What a joke. I'm not targeting anyone. In terms of pretending to be a dog, who can beat me in the sacred state? This is him. All the disciples looked at each other with surprise in their eyes. It shouldn't be. They had originally wanted to use this as an excuse to humiliate Xiaofeng and force him to make a move before teaching him a lesson. However, who would have thought that Chu Feng was not ashamed of himself, but instead proud of himself? He was actually shameless to such an extent. Senior brother Wang, do I look like one now? Xiaofeng smiled warmly, without the slightest embarrassment on his face, causing everyone to not know where to start. Junior brother Feng's talent has really broadened my horizons. You're not just like one, you're simply the incarnation of a dog. Wang Tianduo sneered. He had seen all kinds of strange disciples over the years, but compared to Feng Yi, they were all inferior. Haha, thank you for your compliment, senior brother. Xiaofeng nodded and chuckled, his eyes clear. Wang Tianduo frowned and muttered to himself. It shouldn't be. Junior sister Qingqiu is cold and arrogant. She would never fancy such a coward. Could it be that I'm too sensitive? Junior brother Feng, it seems that the Cold Moon immortal world is about to open. Since we are from the same sect, we must help each other when we enter. Don't let others take away your fortune. In the end, Wang Tianduo's face lit up. Now it seemed that junior sister Qingqiu didn't have any ulterior motive for bullying Feng Yi, but despised him from the bottom of her heart. If it was in the past, Wang Tianduo would definitely use this as an excuse to teach him a lesson so that junior sister Qingqiu would be happy. But, firstly, Feng Yi was Uncle Master Yu Zhao's personal disciple and her only disciple. If he openly provoked and bullied her, that cold Uncle Master would definitely smash his head. Secondly, although Feng Yi was timid and cowardly, his talent wasn't bad. Wang Tianduo had even seen him fight with Han Qingqiu before. The Gung Metal Dao Law was extremely sharp. Even Wang Tianduo didn't have much confidence in suppressing him. This way, when he entered the immortal world, he would have an extra layer of protection with a dog by his side. If there was a problem, Feng Yi would go up. If there was nothing, he could bully him and relieve his junior sister's boredom. It was killing two birds with one stone. Of course, as long as we enter the secret realm, Feng Yi will definitely follow senior brother Wang's lead. Xiaofeng smiled humbly. Wang Tianduo's face also bloomed with a brilliant smile. Of course, the former was also pondering in his heart. This Wang Tianduo was obviously a bootlicker. Ever since Lu Yun went missing, he had always considered himself the eldest senior brother of Cold Moon Immortal Palace. However, a piece of trash like him, who had only reached the 6th grade of Divine General at the age of 38, had not even comprehended a single Dao law. How could he dream of capturing Qingqiu's heart? Pucci. The reason why Xiaofeng didn't fight him wasn't because he was afraid of him. In the Immortal Palace, this person did indeed have some power. He was also the personal disciple of the immortal palace master. It would be of great use in the immortals. He had witnessed Ling Xiao's terror in his previous life. Even though Xia Feng had made a breakthrough in his cultivation and his Dao laws were several times stronger than before, he still couldn't control his Dao. However, who knew if Ling Xiao had changed in this life? Didn't Wang Tianduo like Han Qingqiu? With Qingqiu's feelings for me, she is only one step away. When the time comes, I'll bring her to find a few ruins and obtain a few treasures. I'm afraid she will completely fall for me, just like how I dealt with Xiao Shuang back then. No, it's different. I only used Xiao Shuang. I have no feelings for her. But Qingqiu, I am willing to share my fortune with you. As long as Han Qingqiu fell for him, Xiaofeng had 100 ways to play Wang Tianduo and his bootlickers to death. There are demons in the immortals. Senior brother, senior sister Han hates demons the most. Why don't we kill him? Send his head over and test Ling Xiao's strength at the same time. This was killing two birds with one stone. Inexplicably, the two people standing opposite each other with smiles on their faces cursed in their hearts at the same time. Idiot. Look, it's junior sister Han. Just as everyone was muttering to themselves, a beautiful figure in white came from the clouds on the mountain peak in the distance. Her beautiful face was cold, especially her clear eyes. They were like clear springs in the mountains, moving people's hearts. However, at this time, Han Qingqiu did not even look at Xiaofeng and the others. She walked towards the mountain peak with light steps. Early this morning, Lord Ling Xiao sent a message that he would arrive at the Cold Moon Immortal Palace in a few days. In addition to the identity of the Great Xia Dynasty's divine ancestor, the Dragon Lord of the Great Qin, and the new Emperor of the Ling Dynasty, this young master had an even more important title, the spokesperson of the Holy Sect's divine envoy of the Western Border. In other words, this person's position in the Western Border was much higher than that of the Cold Moon Immortal Palace Master. Therefore, Master, come out and receive the guests. Great Qin Empire, Imperial Palace. Ling Xiao stood with his hands behind his back and looked at the clouds in the distance. There was a touch of indifference on his face. Beside him, Qin Wushuang's face was cold, and there was a hint of reluctance. Behind the two of them, Xiao Beife, Yin Zheng, and thousands of imperial guards were waiting for orders. According to Qin Wushuang, the Great Qin Empire always had a quota of 10 people to enter the Cold Moon Immortal World. In addition to the Great Xia and Great Zhou dynasties, Ling Xiao could bring 30 people there. Along the way, with the protection of Xiao Beife and Yin Zheng, two god emperors, it should be safe. However, regarding this, Ling Xiao smiled and did not agree. With his current skills, who could threaten him in the entire Western Border? The only 8th Grey God Emperor was still wailing in his Sea of Soul. Even if the Holy Sect sent more experts, he could hide in the realm. Moreover, he was now the light of the righteous path and the disciple of the divine envoy. Who in the world dared to touch him? I don't know how long I'll be back. Before I return, don't act rashly. Ling Xiao turned and looked at Xiao Beife. Now, there are not many god emperors in the Great Qin Empire, and there were not many experts. With Xiao Beife here, he could feel more at ease. As for the followers he brought into the immortal world, damn, did you forget that I have 10,000 blood guards fully equipped with divine weapons in my realm? Yes, my lord. Xiao Beife bowed. However, Qin Wushuang's eyes suddenly turned red, and he whispered softly, "Be careful. Don't worry. When I return, I will send you to the Western Border." Ling Xiao smiled gently and took a step forward. There seemed to be a dragon shadow following him. A loud dragon roar resounded through the world. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw a 1,000-foot-long demonic dragon winding through the sky, carrying a tall and straight young man into the distance. Between heaven and earth, a foul wind blew. Boundless demonic aura swept through the sky, raising thousands of clouds and clouds. At this moment, all the citizens of the Great Qin Empire knelt on the ground with pious eyes. The dragon was the symbol of a nation's fortune. They never dreamed that they would be lucky enough to see such a miracle today. God bless the great Qin Empire. God bless the great Qin Empire. However, who was that young man riding the dragon? Could he be an immortal? Greetings, immortal. Immortal's protection. Immortal, please let me be rich and live a long life, and let my family live in peace. Chapter 499. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. The entire cold moon celestial palace gradually became lively. In the sky, large birds landed one after another, and jade pavilions descended from the sky. A series of powerful auras covered the heavens and the earth as countless young men and women dressed in gorgeous clothes appeared on the stage, escorted by their own experts. In the western border, there were 8 empires and dozens of dynasties, and there were countless geniuses. Not to mention, there were also many sects and clans who wanted to get share of the spoils. Cold Moon Celestial Palace did not reject anyone. 10 people from each dynasty, 5 from each dynasty, 3 from each clan, and all the rogue cultivators could scram. Of course, some famous rogue cultivators and peerless geniuses had their own ways to enter the immortal world, so Cold Moon Celestial Palace did not have to consider these. On the 3rd day, the Cold Moon Celestial Palace Master suddenly ordered all the elders and disciples to dress neatly and stand along the mountain path. She herself, along with many elders and true disciples of the sect, had already stood respectfully in front of the mountain gate. Instantly, rumors spread all over Cold Moon Celestial Palace. Even the emperors of the 8 dynasties did not receive such treatment. Could it be that the divine envoy from the Saint sect had arrived? Countless princes and princesses of the dynasties walked out of their chambers and gathered in front of the mountain forest, looking forward to it. The Saint sect was the divine sect that ruled the 4 borders. It was rumored that the divine master of the Saint sect had already broken through the shackles of heaven and earth and looked down on the common people. 300 years ago, he even killed the sky demon and protected the peace of the Xingzhou. The divine envoy of the Saint sect was the inheritor of the divine master's will. If someone could gain his favor, it would be a great opportunity to reach the heavens in one step. In front of the mountain gate, Yu Shao looked calm, but there was a hint of coldness in her eyes. Senior sister's death was really strange. Although she did not know who the culprit was, it was most likely related to the Saint sect. However, with her current strength, she could not threaten this ancient existence. Therefore, she placed all her hopes on Fengyi. The Gung Metal Dao law was almost demonic. As long as he could gain something from the immortal world, his cultivation would definitely improve. When you see that lord later, don't be rude and don't stand up for him. Yu Shao reminded him. She did not have a good impression of the Saint sect. Of course, she had a thorough understanding of Feng Ye's character. She was afraid that the people of the Saint would covet his talent and take him under their wing. Yes, master. Xiao Feng bowed deeply, but he was touched. Ever since he was young, he had never lived in a comfortable environment. The battle between the royal families was a bloody one. If not for the fact that he had helped Emperor Xia steal the great Xia dynasty, he would have been played to death by the Empress and the others. Even so, Xiao Feng had been alone in the palace for a long time. He was still scared, witless, and cautious. Every day, he had to calculate and speculate. Even his expression and words had to be controlled properly. He was the gentle prince in the hearts of the people of the great Xia dynasty and the heartless youth in the eyes of the imperial court officials. However, only Xiao Feng himself knew that what he wanted was not a mere empire, but the entire world. Cowardice is a kind of attitude. He was waiting for the wind, the sun, and the dawn. Once the flowers bloomed, they would amaze everyone. However, this process was painful and exhausting. Thus, it was likely that Xiao Feng had not been happy all these years, until he accidentally entered the Cold Moon Immortal Palace. His master Yu Zhao's strictness and encouragement to him gradually made Xiao Feng rely on her. That kind of meticulous and hopeful gaze made him, a person who believed in cowardice, feel touched. Xiao Feng had never trusted anyone, including his father. However, He only had some trust in Yu Xiao and a sense of belonging to the cold moon immortal palace. Now, whether it was Han Qingqiu's unconventional love or his master's concern, it made Xia Feng feel that life was full of twists and turns, and finally there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Until the end of the world, a demonic wind whistled. The world suddenly darkened, and 100 feet long dragon shadow stood tall in the sky. In front of the mountain gate, the expressions of countless disciples and elders changed. That vast and mighty dragon might actually made them feel as though they were unable to breathe, as expected of the Lord from the Saint sect. Riding a dragon? How many people in the entire Xingzhou had such heavenly might? Although at this moment, everyone could feel that the demonic dragon's cultivation realm was not high. But, damn, was cultivation realm and bloodline the same thing? That was a dragon that soared to the 9 heavens. Just this wisp of dragon might alone was not something an ordinary divine king or divine emperor could contend against, right? But why does the figure on the dragon's head look so young? Although no one could see Ling Zhao's face at this moment, his white robes fluttered in the wind, making him look like an immortal. The one who came was actually a young lord. The eyes of many imperial court prides and ancient clan successors began to shine, and even their delicate bodies unconsciously tensed up. The Saint sect stood at the peak of the Xingzhou. Not to mention joining the Saint sect, even the slightest bit of involvement with this lord would be a turning point in their lives. You are a princess and cannot inherit the throne. I once had a one-night stand with the Saint sect's divine envoy. You are a bastard and cannot break the rules of the clan. I once had a talk with the Saint sect's divine envoy. I once had a toast with the Saint sect divine envoy. You are awesome. You are the hope of our clan's revival. So this is the so-called ice goddess, the arrogant genius? Seeing the divine envoy, all of them were stunned. In the crowd, Xia Feng snorted coldly. Indeed, only strength was the standard to measure status. Even if the person who came was extremely ugly, he believed that these geniuses would still be willing to spend time with him. And this was the motivation for Xia Feng to follow the path of seclusion. The contempt and abuse now was just a training for him to go to the top of the world. So what if my face is disfigured? As long as I am above the heavens one day, there is nothing in this world that I cannot have. But thinking about it was just thinking about it. Xia Feng's face was also burning with excitement. He almost shouted out loud, divine envoy, I love you." Damn, what a joke. If one could reach the heavens in one step, who would be willing to stay in the dark? Although he did not really respect the Saint sect, and even regarded it as his biggest stumbling block to stepping out of this world. But before that, of course, he should stay in the dark and seek the greatest benefits. But Xia Feng turned to look at Han Qingqiu, but at this moment he saw that her face was cold and even had a hint of grief and indignation. He immediately felt gratified. This is the woman I love. She is indeed not comparable to those ordinary women. Even the Saint sect's divine envoy is not in her eyes. Qingqiu, you are cold and arrogant. You are unique. You are a different color in this world. Comparing the two, Xia Feng was even more certain that Han Xiuqing was interested in him. Otherwise, why would she do something unnecessary and make things difficult for him all the time? She was making things difficult for him because of love. Inexplicably, Xia Feng's eyes suddenly became wet. Even Yu Xiao, who was beside him, was slightly stunned. What the damn? Why is this true disciple of mine more excited than those geniuses when he sees the people of the Saint sect? Chapter 500. In front of the mountain gate, Han Qingqiu's eyes were clear as she looked at the young man's figure. At this moment, his body seemed to be shrouded by immortal clouds, which evolved into thousands of Tao laws. Peerless and independent, it made people feel a sense of reverence in their hearts. But, in the eyes of others, Ling Xiao was upright, righteous, and gentle. But Han Qingqiu had seen with her own eyes how he had plotted to kill Lu Yun and deceive the Cold Moon Palace Master. Although Han Qingqiu had forgotten the memory of Ling Xiao turning into a demon. But inexplicably, Han Xiuqing was terrified when she saw him. This was a peerless demon who played with the world in the palm of his hand. His temperament was not something that ordinary people could guess. He had even forcefully taken over her body. Therefore, this was probably the reason why Han Qingqiu's eyes were cold. Everyone loved him, but they did not know his ruthlessness. But so what? Now, in the western border, only this person dared to plot against the holy sect and go against the heavens. If she wanted to take revenge, Han Qingqiu had no other choice. Beep. The destined girl has a firm will. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 300 luck points and 3,000 villain points. Hearing the system notification, the corners of Ling Xiao's mouth curled up into a smile. Then, he lifted his leg and descended. Previously, Folded Shadow had sent back news that the Cold Moon Palace Master had personally asked if the Divine Envoy's disciple would participate in the competition of the Immortals. Folded Shadow only replied with one word, yes. Looking at the situation now, it was obvious that the Cold Moon Palace Master did not suspect his identity. In other words, in her eyes, it was impossible for the Divine Envoy to be killed silently. In the entire Xingzhou, it was even more impossible for someone to be so bold as to pretend to be the Divine Envoy and show off everywhere. Looking at the figure descending from the sky, Xiafeng's face gradually filled with doubt. Why does this figure look more familiar the closer he gets? No, it's not familiar. I must have seen him somewhere before. At this moment, Xiafeng only knew that a big shot of the Holy Sect was coming from the Cold Moon Palace today. Naturally, he did not think that it was Ling Xiao. After all, in his previous life, although this demon was cunning, he did not dare to plot against the Holy Sect. But, for some inexplicable reason, the confusion in his eyes grew heavier, and a wisp of uneasiness unconsciously gushed out from the bottom of his heart. Why does this figure resemble the figure of the great Xia dynasty's sacred ancestor? That's not right. Didn't the divine ancestor come from the upper realm? Am I overthinking things? For the past few days, Xiafeng had been cultivating by Yu Zhao's side. He was almost oblivious to what was happening outside. Although he knew some of the changes that had happened in the western border, it was not comprehensive. With his status in the sect, others would only mock and ridicule him. How could they possibly discuss the general situation of the western border with him? Therefore, up until now, Xiafeng only knew that Ling Xiao and Xiao Yunli had joined forces to attack Great Zhou. However, he still didn't know that his great Xia's divine ancestor was the true demon who had killed him in his previous life. Ling Xiao's figure descended from the sky and appeared above everyone's heads in the blink of an eye. However, at the moment when Xiafeng raised his head to look at him, the Cold Moon Palace Master immediately bowed to him. Welcome to my Cold Moon Immortal Palace, disciples of the Divine Envoys. The Cold Moon Palace Master had the cultivation of a 7th grade Divine Emperor. Although her reputation was unparalleled in the western border, she was merely a chess piece. In the sacred sect, she was at most a chess piece placed here. She definitely couldn't be compared to the Divine Envoys. Since this young man was valued by their lord, he would definitely be put in an important position in the future. Greetings, my lord. The group of elders and disciples of the Immortal Palace all bowed down. Xiafeng didn't even see Ling Xiao's face clearly before he followed them and bowed down. Rise! Ling Xiao smiled indifferently and looked deeply at Xiafeng, who was in the crowd. After not seeing him for a few days, this little leak's luck had increased to 3,000 points. As expected of a reincarnated model, not only was his luck terrifying, even his temperament was incomparable to that of a person from his previous life. In Ling Xiao's opinion, although the western border had several destiny figures, the one who could truly walk to the peak was still this prince of the great Xia dynasty. It couldn't be helped. After living 2 lives, his temperament was stable. Xiafeng also believed in the Tao of treachery, so it wouldn't be an exaggeration to describe him as advancing step by step. Such a person wouldn't easily reveal his fangs. Once his secret was discovered, he would most likely have grown to an extremely terrifying level. Unfortunately, no matter how strong his model was, he was just a lowly ant, not worth mentioning. In the distant forest, the geniuses from various dynasties also bowed down. Ling Zhao's gaze swept across them and paused briefly on each of them. That's right, 2 leeks, 1 male and 1 female. The female looked sweet and her eyes were clear, with a faint divine light flowing in them. She was dressed in a dazzling golden robe with a flying phoenix embroidered on it. She should be the princess of Great Yuan, Yuan Yao, that Qin Wushuang had mentioned. Bodhi Dao Heart for 1,000 points of luck, 5th grade, Divine General. Most importantly, there seemed to be a mighty force surrounding her body, which automatically evolved into a divine shadow and Buddha light, mysterious and unfathomable. Beside her, there were several young geniuses with powerful auras surrounding her. One of them had a cold and arrogant face, dressed in purple. His eyes revealed a mysterious intent, as if he was 1,000 miles away and had an ethereal feeling. Heavenly Secret Dao Body, for 1,000 points of luck, 4th grade, Divine General. Most importantly, although his aura wasn't very powerful, he had comprehended the power of Dao Law. Moreover, it was a Dao Law that Ling Xiao had never seen before. Sacred Dao Law? F***CK? What's the use of words and deeds? Very suddenly, Ling Xiao's interest in this young man in purple seemed to have increased. When he saw Ling Xiao looking over, the young man in purple trembled and bowed from afar, looking extremely respectful. Ah! At this moment, there was a sudden exclamation in front of the mountain gate, instantly attracting everyone's attention. They saw Xiaofeng standing beside Yu Xiao, looking at Ling Xiao in horror. His eyes were filled with indescribable shock and fear. Ling Xiao. Naturally, he would never forget this face. However, how could it be? How could he be from a sacred sect? He was a demon, a great demon, a person that the world couldn't tolerate. The sacred sect's duty was to slay demons, but suddenly, Xiaofeng felt a chill all over his body. His body trembled, and he felt a chill down his spine. Could it be that, in this life, Ling Xiao had even deceived the sacred sect? With his identity, it was impossible for him to collude with the sacred sect. The only explanation was that Ling Xiao had used some unknown method to hide his identity and deceive the world. In his previous life, he had done so. However, Xiaofeng had never dreamed that this demon would become even more terrifying and powerful in this life. But even if he knew Ling Xiao's true identity, now that he was a disciple of the Divine Envoy, if he pointed out that this person was a demon, wouldn't he be killed on the spot by the Hanyu Palace Master? After all, the Hanyu Palace Master had bowed 120 degrees. Her respect for Ling Xiao was written all over her face. He looked at me. Beep. The destined child is shocked by the host's identity. Congratulations to the host for plundering 500 luck points and 5,000 villain points. You know me? Ling Xiao stared at Xiaofeng with a playful smile on his face. True demon Xiaofeng, we meet again. Do you think I can't recognize you just because you change your face? No. I, Ling Xiao, like to be faithful to one person. Not to mention changing your face. Even if you change your gender, I will send you to your grave. Chapter 501. The Cold Moon Palace Master frowned. She looked at Xiaofeng, who was standing beside Yu Xiao with surprise. Her eyes were filled with coldness. This inexperienced person actually screamed when he saw the young master's true appearance. At this moment, Yu Xiao's face was also gloomy. My good disciple, what are you doing? Is it necessary? Even your voice is trembling. Inexplicably, Yu Xiao placed her hand on her forehead and turned her head to look elsewhere. This is too embarrassing. I don't know. Xiaofeng's head shook like a rattle drum. Ling Xiao suspected that if Xiaofeng exerted more strength, he might be able to spiral into the air. If you don't know, why are you so flustered when you see me? Ling Xiao frowned. His face was filled with coldness. I I thought that the holy sex lord must be an old senior. Seeing how young the young master is, I am truly shocked. Xiao Feng swallowed his saliva. This is too unexpected. He knew that he would definitely meet Ling Xiao here when the Cold Moon Immortal's miracle opened. In fact, he had been secretly paying attention for the past few days. However, he truly did not expect that their meeting would be in such a bizarre manner. The disciple of the holy sex divine envoy? F***CK. If the divine messenger were to find out about Ling Xiao's true identity, he would probably die on the spot. Teaching the Tao through a devil. Oh, is that so? Ling Xiao nodded indifferently. There was no trace of joy or sorrow on his face. Seeing this, Yu Xiao clenched her teeth and stood in front of Ling Xiao. My lord, my disciple is short-sighted and shallow. I hope that you will not blame me for disturbing you. Oh, short-sighted. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He looked at Yu Xiao meaningfully. It seemed that he was not satisfied with this reason. However, it could be seen that this cold palace elder cared a lot about Xiao Feng. The latter's eyes were also filled with respect and gratitude when he looked at her. Ha, Xiao Feng, oh Xiao Feng, you have given me another option to exploit you. Right at this moment, Han Qingqiu appeared on the mountain path. She was dressed in white and walked towards Xiao Feng and Ling Xiao. Looking at the beautiful figure that appeared in front of him, Xiao Feng became excited. Could it be perhaps Qingqiu was going to stand up for me? Yes. Although Ling Xiao had the halo of being a disciple of the oracle, with Qingqiu's cold and arrogant temperament, she might not really take him seriously. Moreover, her true feelings for him could be seen by the sun and moon. At this moment, seeing that someone was making things difficult for her, she must be feeling extremely tormented in her heart. Woo, woo, woo. Xiao Feng looked up at the sky and sighed, tears welling up in his eyes. Qingqiu, what did I, Xiao Feng, do to deserve your death? Although this demon would one day become the enemy of the entire world, his current status could be said to be terrifying. Of course, with Han Qingqiu's strength, she was not necessarily Ling Xiao's opponent. But if she offended him now, she would definitely be punished by her sect. But this is all for me. Qingqiu, don't worry. As long as I enter the immortal world, I will find a way to expose this demon's identity and consign him to eternal damnation. At this moment, I can only wrong you first. But, just as Xiao Feng was feeling excited, he saw Han Qingqiu walk in front of Ling Xiao. She bowed slightly, and a charming smile appeared on her face. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The entire cold moon, celestial mountain, was filled with the sound of people sucking in cold air. Han Qingqiu, just like her name, had an extremely cold temperament. The disciples had only seen this fairy's cold and arrogant side. When had they ever seen her bow and smile to anyone? Crack. Suddenly, Xiao Feng seemed to hear the sound of his heart breaking. How could this be? This should not be. Han Qingqiu, my goddess, how could she be a person who fawns over others? Xiao Feng clearly remembered that in his previous life, Han Qingqiu fought with Ling Xiao in the secret territory because of a treasure. With her personality, it was impossible for her to be so submissive. What is going on? Before Xiao Feng could figure out the reason, he saw Ling Xiao suddenly reach out and gently touch Han Qingqiu's beautiful face, a gentle smile on his face. Qingqiu, we meet again. Mister, I trust you have been well since we last met. You are still as radiant as ever. Han Qingqiu's beautiful face blushed and shyly lowered her head. That slightly rosy, celestial face was like the moon covered by clouds. Beautiful and magnificent, like a scene out of this world. Slap, slap, slap. In the crowd, suddenly, a disciple rolled his eyes and began to madly slap his face. Han Qingqiu, the dream of all the disciples of Cold Moon Celestial Palace. Today, she actually showed such a charming face to a young man. Among them, Wang Tianduo was filled with sorrow. It turned out that Junior's sister was not heartless, but already had someone in her heart. That's right. Only an outstanding person like that young man from the western border is worthy of Junior's sister Qingqiu. Junior's sister, I bless you. At this time, Xiao Feng's hands were clenched into fists, his nails digging into his palms. At this time, although his heart was filled with hatred, his face still maintained a calm appearance. The hope in his heart had turned into despair. He did not hate Han Qingxiu. It must be that Ling Xiao had used some method to confuse the fairy. Why? A true demon, revered by the world, favored by the fairy. And he, Xiaofeng, the light of the righteous path, with the destiny of heaven, had to hide behind others, be ridiculed, and watch the person he loved the most fall into the embrace of the demon. No, I must find a chance to tell Qingxiu the truth. Otherwise, she will definitely become that demon's tool. Beep, the child of destiny is filled with despair and fantasies. Congratulations to the host for plundering 500 luck points and 5,000 villain points. Of course, at this time, it was not only the disciples of Cold Moon Celestial Palace who were suffering in their hearts. Those arrogant princesses who pretended to be cold and arrogant, at this time, were all shocked. They looked at the blushing fairy with disdain and couldn't help but coldly curse in their hearts. Hey, I didn't expect that Han Qingxiu would disregard her status like this. She actually took the initiative to throw herself into his arms. It seems that her usual aloofness was all an act. They had also forgotten that when they first saw Ling Xiao, they almost acted ugly. But this place was the Cold Moon sect, so Han Qingxiu more or less took advantage of the geographical location. It seems that later, when the Cold Moon Palace Master and the others are gone, I will also take the initiative to see if I can establish a relationship with this young lord. At this time, the Cold Moon Palace Master looked at the two people who were brazenly kissing each other, but there was no surprise on her face. After all, that day, Ling Xiao had killed the true demon River Yu and saved Han Qingxiu. That was why he was rewarded by the Divine Envoy and was bestowed the status of a disciple of the Divine Envoy. A young man who had slain a demon, stepped on the clouds, and came here. It was normal for a proud girl to fall in love with him. Moreover, Ling Xiao was handsome and extraordinary, standing tall and straight. If she was 100 years younger, she would also be moved by him. Young master, you must be tired after coming from afar, right? Why are you angry with this dog? I have prepared some hot wine and tea. Let's go and rest first. Xiaofeng, who was gradually suppressing his jealousy, suddenly froze on the spot. Dog. Qingxiu actually called me a dog. Pucci. Inexplicably, Xiaofeng suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. But in order to hide his anger and unwillingness, he swallowed it back. This is not right. This plot is not right. In the previous life, Qingxiu was bewitched by him, but that was after she entered the immortal world. How come now? It was very unexpected, very hesitant, very cold. Chapter 502. Beep, the Tao heart of the Son of Destiny, is broken. Congratulations to the host for plundering 500 luck points and 5,000 villain points. The smile on Ling Xiao's face grew wider, and a hint of coldness flashed across his eyes. See, this is the benefit of laying the foundation. It was a piece of cake. Plunder 1,500 luck and 15,000 villain points. If he hadn't sent Han Qingxiu back to the Immortal Palace and used his words and actions to guide Xiaofeng's imagination, he wouldn't be so angry and sullen. Originally, in Xiaofeng's heart, Han Qingxiu was already in his bag. But now, seeing his woman, a proud fairy, throwing herself into the arms of a hypocritical true demon with his own eyes, such a blow was undoubtedly fatal. If Han Qingxiu had always been cold to him, she would have ignored him. At most, Xiaofeng would only be angry and jealous. He definitely wouldn't break his own Tao heart like now. But, little leak, you haven't done your duty. How can I bear to kill you now? What's your name? Ling Xiao nodded and smiled. He reached out to hold Han Qingxiu's hand and looked at Xiaofeng. Gulp. Xiaofeng swallowed his heart blood, and a hint of excitement appeared on his face. My lord, disciple Feng Yi. Looking at his overly exaggerated expression, Yu Zhao's face turned cold, and she felt inexplicably unhappy. Although she knew that this disciple had an inferiority complex, she didn't think that he would try to curry favor with the people of the sacred sect. Moreover, She was prepared to nurture Feng Yi into a peerless expert and find out the secret of her senior sister's death to fight against the sacred sect. But looking at Feng Ye's appearance, it was hard to count on him. Yu Xiao probably didn't expect that Xia Feng wasn't afraid of the sacred sect. He was afraid of Ling Zhao's true demon identity. Although the people of the sacred sect were domineering, they were still the leader of the righteous path. He wouldn't kill anyone in broad daylight, but true demons were different. They killed people based on their preferences. At this moment, Xia Feng was very worried. If Ling Xiao was unhappy, he would be charged with the crime of offending him and kill him with a single slash. Oh, you don't have to be so nervous. I'm not a good person. I'm afraid that you must have some regrets in your heart after seeing your face disfigured. Seeing the excitement on Xia Feng's face, Ling Zhao's lips curled into a playful smile. Suddenly, he took out a medicinal pill and threw it at Xia Feng. This pill is called the facial restoration pill. It belongs to the upper tier of the 4th grade. Eat it, and you'll be able to regain your previous appearance. Ling Xiao wasn't lying. He had already heard about Xia Feng's self-destruction from the system notification. Therefore, on the way here, Ling Xiao had personally sought out Pill Elder and spent a lot of spiritual materials to concoct a pill of little value. As for the purpose, it was naturally to help others. This Xia Feng was indeed the mandate of heaven. Even now, the smile on his face was extremely humble and sincere, and there was not the slightest clue that there was anything wrong with it. However, even if you want to hide, I have plenty of ways to make you reveal your true colors. What? So the disciple of Cold Moon Celestial Palace, Feng Yi, was the infamous true demon Xia Feng of the western border. In this way, before the opening of the immortal world, he would be able to harvest it at any time when he entered the immortal world. Otherwise, with so many leaks here, I'm afraid that I won't be able to eat it. After all, although this thing is good, it will take time to digest it. Recover my appearance? Xia Feng took the Jade by Ling pill with one hand, and a trace of panic flashed across his eyes. Damn! It wasn't easy for me to destroy my appearance, hide from the world, and hide in Cold Moon Celestial Palace to wait for the day when I enter the immortal world. You actually want me to recover my appearance? I think you just want me to die. Now, the blame of him being a true demon was firmly placed on him. It was said that the divine messenger from the holy sect was looking for him all over the western border. Although, Xia Feng clearly knew that the real devil was right in front of him. But how many people would believe his words? Ling Xiao, I think you're targeting me, but I don't have any evidence. Ha ha. Thank you for your kindness, my lord. Xia Feng bowed, and his mind was filled with thoughts. In the end, he raised his head and looked at Ling Xiao. His eyes were filled with true feelings like the vast grassland. But my lord, I am ashamed to accept such a divine pill. Ye's appearance has been destroyed for a long time. Now, this ugly appearance is more like a kind of encouragement, urging me to work hard in cultivation. So, please take back this pill, my lord. Hearing Xia Feng's words, the surrounding people were all moved. Even Yu Xiao looked at the disciple beside her with astonishment. She didn't expect that Feng Yi, who usually looked like a yes man, would have such a belief in his heart, using ugliness as a stubbornness to urge cultivation. No wonder he had already comprehended the Tao law at such a young age and cultivated to the 4th stage, divine general. With such a temperament, why would he not be able to reach the great Tao? Feng Yi, you're indeed my disciple. Master thinks highly of you. Too touching, this young man is too touching. His appearance was destroyed, but not only did it not destroy his self-esteem, it made his temperament even more tenacious. He should be the role model for cultivators of our generation. In the forest, Yuan Yao, who was wearing a golden robe, suddenly covered her mouth and exclaimed. Unknowingly, her eyes were filled with tears. This, beside her, many geniuses nodded and sighed in their hearts. As expected of Princess Yuan Yao, a saint with a benevolent heart, looking at the suffering of the common people, one would unconsciously feel sorrow. Young Master Mo, do you know this young man? I want to befriend him. I want to use the power of the dynasty to help him cultivate. Yuan Yao suddenly turned to look at the black-clothed young man beside her and asked in a deep voice, He in the entire western border, how can there be someone that I, Mo Wuya, don't know? Even if I don't know him, he should know me, not to mention a disciple of the Cold Palace. I even know that young lord. Mo Wuya smiled indifferently. His black robe fluttered in the wind, giving him a somewhat otherworldly feeling. Actually, he knew a hammer like Feng Yi and Ling Xiao. He was just pretending to be profound in front of the woman he loved. Sure enough, when Yuan Yao saw the cold arrogance on Mo Wuya's face, a strange light flashed through her beautiful eyes. Even the surrounding geniuses did not have the slightest doubt. They all praised him. That's right, with young Master Wuya's status. Who in the western border doesn't know him? I guess young Master Wuya and that young lord must have similar temperaments. Both of them are righteous and unyielding people. Following young Master Wuya is indeed the right choice. Young Master Mo, later, you must introduce me to that young lord. Yuan Yao lowered her head and smiled faintly. However, Mo Wuya's expression suddenly froze. The hell? Didn't you want to befriend that disciple of the Cold Moon Palace? A mere disciple. Even if he was a true disciple, Mo Wuya naturally did not care about him. He only needed to find an opportunity to get to know him. With his talent, he would at most be able to coax this person into liking him with a few words. However, that young lord was clearly a cold and arrogant person. It was not that he was not confident in his eloquence. He was truly afraid that young lord would not give him a chance at all. Damn, I was careless. Oh, you mean you don't want my spiritual pill? At this moment, Ling Zhao's expression turned gloomy again after hearing Xia Feng's words. Little brother, you're not giving me face. You're rejecting my good intentions in front of so many people, and you're saying it in such a righteous manner? If you eat my spiritual pill, it will delay your cultivation? Then this spiritual pill, you have to eat it properly. If I don't give you the fortune, you can't snatch it. Otherwise, you'll die. However, if I give it to you, you can't refuse it. Otherwise, you'll still die. Chapter 503. No, sir, I'm just ashamed to accept it. Given Xia Feng's character, how would he dare to offend Ling Xiao now? However, regardless of whether or not this pill was poisonous, this demon had evil intentions. Who knew if he was secretly trying to poison him to death? Even if this pill wasn't poisonous, once he ate it and regained his appearance, he would suffer a fate worse than death. Given the strength of the people here, Xiaofeng would probably be killed by those righteous people the moment he showed up. If I say I'm not ashamed, then I'm not ashamed. Just eat it. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows, and the coldness on his face intensified. Xiaofeng definitely had to enter the Immortals. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spent so much effort to sneak into Cold Moon Palace. However, before entering, Ling Xiao felt that it was still necessary to expose him. This way, his identity as a true demon would be confirmed. Who would believe him then? Otherwise, once he had the chance and made a few friends, Ling Xiao's forbidden demon body would be exposed. As a villain, of course, he had to be more cautious. There were many heavenly wills here. Who knew if they would cause any trouble when they were together? As for how he would enter the mystic realm later, if I say I can let him in, he will definitely be able to. Would you believe me? This isn't too good. Sir, Xiaofeng was still trying to resist, but Ling Zhao's face had a cold smile. Junior brother, the aura on your body reminds me of someone. Who? Xiaofeng's body trembled, and a flash of fear appeared in his eyes. Impossible. Sir, Feng Yi has been training in the mountains since young and has never come out. Now that he has joined Cold Moon Palace, he has been cultivating in the sect. Sir, you must be mistaken. Is that so? Gung Metal Dao Law. There's a faint trace of demonic intent on you. You can't be the true demon prince of Great Xiaofeng, right? Ling Zhao's tone was filled with doubt, and even his expression was solemn. F***CK. How could he feel any demonic intent? It was just that this person was Xiaofeng. Of course, he would blame everything on him. Thus, Even if he wanted to refute, he didn't have the confidence. What? Xiaofeng? Hearing this, the expressions of the surrounding people instantly froze. Even the cold Moon Palace Master's eyes flickered with shock. Xiaofeng's name was known throughout the entire western border. As a true demon, his methods were cruel, but why would this devil appear in his cold Moon Immortal Palace? If this was true, how was she going to explain it to the divine envoy? But this Feng, ye had devil intent? How could I, a 7th-grade divine emperor, not sense it? How did this Ling Xiao sense it? Could it be that he had a supreme treasure that could detect demonic will? Or did Lord Oracle teach him some secret technique? Yes, that must be it. There were many experts in the sacred church, and they were all skilled. Although she was a 7th-grade divine emperor, she was nothing compared to those lords. For some reason, the Frost Moon Palace Master felt even more reverence for Ling Xiao. Xiaofeng? Isn't he the devil who killed the great Zhou princess and the grandson of great Xia's imperial preceptor, Qiao Yunli? How is that possible? Cold Moon Immortal Palace is actually hiding a devil? This Frost Moon Palace Master is not right. The discussion was like a tidal wave, but Xiaofeng's face was slightly pale. How is that possible? Where did the devil intent come from? You are the devil. Your whole family is devils. Also, how did this Ling Xiao see through my identity? Suddenly, Xiaofeng felt a chill in his heart. His entire body felt like it was about to turn cold. Ha, my little leek, don't be nervous. I won't let you die here. You have to know that as a leek, you should have the awareness of a leek. If you don't release the last bit of light and heat, even the Heavenly Emperor won't be able to kill you. I said it. Ha, ha ha ha. Lord, what kind of joke are you making? How can I be the true demon of great Xia that everyone is cursing? I heard that the true demon is handsome and has a royal aura. I'm just a mortal. You can't slander me just because I comprehended the same Tao law as him, right? Xiaofeng's eyes trembled. To be honest, he really wanted to turn around and run. However, once he left Cold Moon Immortal Palace today, he would be fully recognized as a devil. More importantly, he would lose the opportunity to enter Cold Moon Immortal Palace. He could not afford to pay this price. That's right, young master. My disciple, Feng Yi, is an upright and low-profile person. How can he be that evil true demon? Did you make a mistake? Yu Xiao moved slightly and stood in front of Xiaofeng. Given the ruthlessness of the sacred sect, they would rather kill the wrong person than let the wrong person go. Feng Yi did offend you, but he shouldn't have died, right? Why was he suddenly labeled as a devil? In Yu Xiao's opinion, Ling Xiao was most likely trying to find an excuse to get rid of this disrespectful disciple. However, if you really dare to kill the innocent, I will stop you even if you are the disciple of a divine envoy. Are you mistaken? As long as you eat this pill, everything will be clear. What's there to argue about? Ling Xiao smiled indifferently. The Tao Law energy around him quietly surged. Between heaven and earth, wind howled and thunderclouds gathered. It was as if he was really angry. For your innocence and for your future, eat it. Yu Xiao snorted and turned to look at Xiaofeng. The latter opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. However, when he sensed the killing intent in Cold Moon Palace Master and Ling Xiao's eyes, he finally put the pill into his mouth. Heaven and earth fell silent. At the foot of Cold Moon Mountain, everyone stared at Feng Yi with a serious expression. If this person was really a devil, whoever could kill him would definitely become a little devil slayer hero and gain the appreciation of this young lord. Damn, this is a chance. The disciples who originally sympathized with Feng Ye's bad luck now inexplicably hoped that he was Xiaofeng. Sigh, that young lord seems to be too domineering. In front of the forest, Yuan Yao frowned slightly and walked toward Ling Xiao. However, before she could get close, Ling Xiao suddenly raised his hand and slapped Xiaofeng's face. Why aren't you swallowing it? Are you trying to absorb it? Poochie. Shocked, Xiaofeng immediately spat out the pill. Before the crowd could react, the young man who was slapped to the ground by Ling Xiao stood up and rushed toward the distant sky. You know what I mean, right? However, He didn't give anyone any time to react. His figure had already appeared a few hundred meters away. Damn, he ran away just like that? Everyone looked at each other with dazed expressions. Even Cold Moon Palace Master and Yu Xiao were in disbelief. This person, could he really be Xiaofeng? Buzz. Cold light filled the sky. Cold Moon Palace Master stepped forward and wanted to chase after Xiaofeng. However, Ling Xiao waved his hand and stopped her. Palace Master, there is no need for you to do such a small thing. Leave it to me. What a joke. Of course, only I can eat my chives. Why would a woman like you eat chives? Cold Moon Palace Master frowned slightly and did not dare to move. However, she understood that this young lord wanted to make a contribution. A young man who slays demons will be praised by the world. Using this opportunity, Ling Zhao's position in the Holy Church would be more stable. However, what can I do? I am just a pawn of the Holy Church, a pawn that is half abandoned. Of course, I don't dare to offend this disciple of the Holy Church. Lord, please wait. However, just as Ling Xiao pretended to chase after Xiaofeng, a beautiful figure suddenly walked out from the crowd. Her face seemed to be filled with anxiety and sadness. It was the princess of Deyuan, Yuan Yao. Chapter 504. Let's talk about it another day. I still have to go and slay the demons. Ling Xiao frowned, but he sneered in his heart. Great. I was just thinking about how to create an excuse for Xiaofeng to escape, and you gave me the opportunity. I wonder if you'll run over with a pillow when I want to sleep? Sir, don't be anxious. Yuan Yao shook her head with a faint smile on her face. Behind her, Mo Weia braced himself and followed her. At this moment, his heart was hesitant, helpless, and nervous. This was because he was afraid that Ling Xiao would expose the bullsh *T he had boasted about earlier. But if he didn't come over, he was afraid that with Yuan Yao's temper, she might anger his excellency and be killed by him. What exactly do you want? A trace of coldness flashed across Ling Xiao's eyes. This Yuan Yao couldn't have been so benevolent to this extent, right? From what she did before, Ling Xiao had roughly guessed that this princess of the Yuan, who cared about the people of the world, was most likely the kind of woman you guys really yearned for and pretended to hate. She was pure and kind to everyone. She lived in her own world, that white moonlight. But now, it seemed that Ling Xiao had underestimated her. What was she doing now? She was creating time for Xiaofeng to escape. F***CK. To put it nicely, Yuan Yao's actions were benevolent and kind. To put it bluntly, this was Molly, protecting demons? Sir, I think that junior brother Feng, you might not be Xiaofeng. He might have suddenly thought of something urgent and left in a hurry. Yuan Yao's expression was serious as she looked at Ling Xiao innocently. But I'm afraid that his departure has already caused Sir to completely misunderstand. With Sir's strength, he might not even have the chance to explain himself. So, I think Sir should give him a chance to explain himself before making a decision. Ling Xiao looked at Yuan Yao in front of him in a daze. Her expression was very proper. He suddenly left because of something urgent? How could that be called leaving in a hurry? Didn't you see that his shoes had fallen on the ground? Give him a chance to explain himself? You're talking as if I wanted to kill him just now. That's right. What Princess Yuan Yao said made sense. Perhaps that Feng Yi really has something to do and has no choice but to leave. Princess is benevolent. Damn it. Earlier, I wanted to kill junior brother Feng Yi. Fortunately, otherwise, wouldn't I have become a murderer? Thank you for your reminder, Princess. It seems that we were too one-sided. It's not very accurate to judge based on subjective assumptions. Moreover, what shocked Ling Xiao even more was that there were countless voices of agreement coming from the mountain path. In the blink of an eye, the resentment on their faces towards the demons disappeared and was replaced with a touch of guilt. Holy shit, what made you change your stance so easily? But suddenly, Ling Xiao's lips curled into a smile. He had already figured out how to deal with this destiny of moonlight. Aren't you merciful? Then I'll help you be completely merciful. Young Master Amo, you're familiar with His Excellency. Why don't you say a few words of advice? Seeing the hesitation on Ling Xiao's face, Yuan Yao turned to look at Mo Wuya. The latter's eyes narrowed, and there was panic in the depths of his eyes. It's here, it's here. This awkward and embarrassing moment still came. How the hell am I familiar with His Excellency? I just wanted to brag behind his back and get a good impression. Who knew this time? I've lost a lot of face. Cough, cough. Mo Wuya smiled awkwardly and bowed deeply to Ling Xiao. Master, do you still remember Wuya? Mo Wuya? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, and Mo Wuya was also stunned. Master seems to know my name? I remember you. Ling Xiao nodded and smiled. His tone was gentle like a cool breeze and rain, nourishing one's heart. Naturally, he had heard the name Mo Wuya from Qin Wushuang. But in terms of familiarity, most likely, this guy was just bragging to Yuan Yao. However, since this person comprehended the holy law, if I give him some face and some benefits, do you think he will turn into a bootlicker and brag about me? Although Ling Xiao did not know the true meaning of the holy law, it was mostly related to one's words and actions. In other words, although Mo Wuya's name sounded like a peerless swordsman or swordsman, in reality, he was just good at talking. As for the fact that no one had seen him fight, those who had seen him fight were all dead. Most likely, he was just bragging. Regardless, it was his ability to make others believe him. Regarding his Tao law, Ling Xiao really had no interest at all. However, if he could easily recruit a bootlicker for himself, the name of Ling Xiao would spread throughout the Xingzhou. At that time, he could kill him and make the best use of him. Ha 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 ha. Master still remembers me. Yuan Yao, did you hear that? I'm not bragging, right? Mo Wuya was stunned for a while and thought hard. Could it be that he had really met this master before? I don't think so. Then Master hiss. Master Ling Xiao, you are righteous, benevolent, kind, and gentle. Cough, cough. Master, I feel that Princess Yuan Yao's words are not without reason. However, it is up to Master to decide what to do. Wuya is willing to follow Master. After saying that, Mo Wuya's face turned serious. His righteous aura soared to the heavens, making him look like a righteous person. Beep. The Chosen One is grateful to the great evil Demon King. Congratulations to the host for plundering 500 luck points and 5,000 villain points. Mo Wuya's words made people feel comfortable. He sounded neither servile nor overbearing, but the flattery in his words was very obvious. Coupled with his actions, not bad. Actually, I also feel that Princess Yuan Yao's words are somewhat reasonable. Fine, let's wait. I feel that Junior Marshal Brother Feng will definitely return tonight. Ling Xiao nodded and said with a gentle expression. Hearing this, the expressions of the Cold Moon Palace Master and the other experts froze. He stopped chasing just like that? This disciple of God's apostle did not seem to be very smart. What Yuan Yao said was obviously twisting words and forcing logic. Moreover, the sacred sect's attitude towards demons had always been to kill wrongly rather than let them go. All the geniuses coveted Yuan Yao's beauty and status. Could it be that a dignified divine disciple was also so superficial? Also, what did you mean by saying that he would return tonight? Feng Yip fled so decisively. However, if his brain hadn't been kicked by a donkey, he wouldn't dare to appear so easily. Suddenly, the Cold Moon Palace Master and the others fell silent. Fine, you're the master, you're awesome. It's too late to chase after the demon now. But when the divine envoy blames you, you better not regret it. Master is benevolent and wise. Yuan Yao and Mo Wuya looked at each other, their eyes filled with excitement and joy. Especially Yuan Yao. How could she not know how unreasonable her request was? Everyone in the Xingzhou knew about the sacred sect's attitude towards demons. But demons were also humans. They should also have a chance to turn over a new leaf. As the saying goes, lay down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha. However, human nature is evil. Other than me, Yuan Yao, how many people in the world can truly care about the common people? Originally, Yuan Yao was lonely and helpless. She had nowhere to vent her thoughts. But today, when she saw Lord Ling Xiao, she finally felt a trace of relief. This feeling of being acknowledged made her even more certain that as long as my heart is filled with love, I can change the world. Chapter 505. Let's go back to the Immortal Palace first. We'll talk about other things later. Ling Xiao glanced at Yuan Yao and Mo Wuya indifferently. Then, he turned around and held Han Qingqiu's hand. Under the escort of the Immortal Palace's disciples and elders, they walked towards the mountain peak. In the crowd, Yu Xiao wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, she didn't open her mouth. She couldn't figure out why Feng Yi suddenly ran away. However, she was sure that her disciple wasn't the cruel true demon that the world spoke of. Although they hadn't interacted much, Yu Xiao had a thorough understanding of Feng Ye's character. He was humble and cowardly, but he was stubborn. How could such a person be a demon? No wonder Milord became a Milord at such a young age. Such character and breadth of mind really make me blush with shame. Mo Wuya sighed, softly, with admiration in his eyes. Approachable, humble, and courteous. Moreover, most of the ordinary geniuses who supported Yuan Yao had their own motives. After all, with this princess of the Yuan's talent and identity, if one could gain her favor, it would naturally be a great help to one's cultivation. However, there wasn't a trace of greed in Lord Ling Xiao's eyes just now. Even the way he looked at Yuan Yao was as clear as a spring. Such a person is the role model for cultivators of my generation. Most importantly, Milord didn't expose my lie just now. How kind and benevolent must his heart be to be so honorable to consider the face of a rogue cultivator like me. At this moment, Mo Wuya had already secretly vowed that he would spread Milord's good name more in the future. He would let more people know that under Milord's cold and handsome appearance, there was a kind heart. No, not spreading it, but directly bragging. Beside him, Yuan Yao also nodded and chuckled. Looking at the back of the youth, a faint smile appeared on her jade-like face. Milord, you are Yuan Yao's soulmate. Buffed. If Ling Xiao knew what the two of them were thinking, he would probably be so happy that he would pee in his pants. Soulmate? Stinky sister, I'm afraid you're thinking too much. I just don't want you to be afraid and hesitate. You must be firm in your Tao heart and become a saint. At that time, the stronger your Tao heart is, the more thorough the collapse will be. I don't have much time to listen to a white lotus like you preach about the Bible. So, you must work hard and love everyone. In the end, you will find that you have not changed the world, but you have made me. Cold Moon Immortal Mountain, 100 li away. Xiaofeng's figure was hidden in the ancient forest, gasping for breath. At this moment, there was anger and grievance on his face, but more than that, there was a hint of confusion. Although he didn't know why Ling Xiao and the Frost Moon Palace Master didn't chase after him, he still didn't know why they didn't chase after him. But with his escape, it could be said that he had completely solidified his name as a true demon. As such, wanting to sneak into the Cold Moon Immortals was no different from a fool's dream. Even in his dreams, Xiaofeng had never imagined that his originally smooth and open path to immortality would actually fall to such a state. Ling Xiao, in my previous life, you tried to kill me, and in this life, you're making things difficult for me. Fine. Who is the true demon between the two of us? Don't you have any idea in your heart? Since you cut off my path to immortality, I will send a message to Sir Divine Envoy regarding the secret of your devil body. I believe that with the ruthlessness of the saint, even if they kill the wrong person, they will never let you go. I won't go to the immortals anymore, but you must die. Buzz. However, just as Xiaofeng was silently cursing in his heart, a strange buzzing sound came from the sky above him. Then he saw an old figure descend from the sky. Majestic heavenly might pressed down like a mountain, directly crushing him into kneeling on the ground. Did he still chase after me? Very suddenly, Xiaofeng's heart surged with the desire to die. Fine. Even if I die today, I will use my death to show my sincerity and tell the world the truth. You're Xiaofeng? This old man has been looking for you for a long time. Xing Shen coldly looked down at the young man whose expression was changing, A trace of evil flashed across his old eyes. With the sole consciousness that Ling Xiao had placed on the imperial golden flower, he easily found Xia Feng's whereabouts. What a joke. A reborn child of destiny who also knew of Ling Xiao's identity. Before the latter appeared, Xiaofeng would not have dared to easily reveal the secret of his rebirth. Naturally, he would not have dared to tell the world that Ling Xiao was a demon if he was not certain. But now his plans had been destroyed, and he was at the end of his rope. Who knew if he would do something crazy? Therefore, it was better to plant this leek in his own courtyard. He could eat it whenever he wanted. Not to mention, anyone with half a brain would have guessed Xiaofeng's identity after he escaped today. But there were some things that had to be done. If he let the world see for themselves that Xiaofeng was a demon, especially his beloved master, this child of destiny's Tao heart would be shattered. His lover was in the demon's arms, and his master was deceived by the demon. He could not explain it. If his Tao heart was not shattered, it could only mean that Xiaofeng wanted to put on an act. I am Xiaofeng, but I am not a demon. Xiaofeng cried out, his eyes filled with the desire to die. Oh, you're not a demon? Then you can die. Xing Shen sneered. Sky demon energy suddenly surged around him, almost frightening Xiaofeng to death. This person is a demon? A god emperor great demon? He is not from Coal Moon Palace? Wait. Senior, wait. Who are you? Suddenly, Xiaofeng had some guesses in his heart. Could it be that this demon was looking for him to rope him in? After all, he was the most famous demon in the Western frontier. Although he really was not a demon, as long as he could survive, what harm was there in pretending? I am the great demon of Xing Yuanshan. I heard that a true demon had appeared in the Western frontier, so I came to find him. I did not expect you to not be one. Xing Shen shook his head in disappointment. The next moment, demonic energy swirled in his hand, and a seal appeared in the air, aimed at Xiaofeng's head. Damn! Great demon. I'm a demon. Blood energy swirled around Xiaofeng's body, which vaguely took the shape of a dragon. It was full of evil energy. This was the most evil cultivation technique he had ever mastered. He was not using it to resist, but to prove it. I'm a demon. As expected, the God Emperor Great Demon narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiaofeng in surprise. Xiaofeng, you are indeed a demon. Not bad. There is hope for the demon lineage to rise again. Senior, I am willing to lick the fire of the demon lineage. Xiaofeng heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he did not have time to reveal Ling Xiao's identity. Otherwise, wouldn't he have sent another God Emperor to help him? Judging from the aura of this great demon, he was obviously close to a 5th-stage God Emperor. Such a demon must have terrifying combat strength. Wonderful. I, Xiaofeng, am indeed blessed by the heavens. When I am at the end of my rope, there is a new opportunity. Although there are endless troubles in the future if I am on the same side as a demon, but what can I do? I am at a dead end now. What troubles in the future? I have to survive first. Moreover, with this demon's protection, maybe I can create some chaos in the Cold Moon Celestial Palace. Then, I could take the opportunity to sneak into the Cold Moon Celestial Palace. I heard that a divine envoy disciple came to the Cold Moon Celestial Palace. While Xiaofeng was deep in thought, a smile suddenly appeared on Xing Shen's face. Chapter 506. That's right. His name is Ling Xiao. He's currently on the Cold Moon Celestial Mountain. Xiaofeng's eyes flashed with anger at the mention of Ling Xiao. The true devil was worshipped by everyone, but he, the heaven's mandate, carried the name of a devil. Moreover, most importantly, this bastard used some unknown method to make Qingqiu have a good impression of him. No, I must find a chance to tell Qingqiu the truth. Otherwise, she would definitely lose both her body and her life. I heard that he killed another genius of the devil path, River Yu, and saved the Cold Moon Celestial Maiden, Han Qingqiu. This person must die. Otherwise, my hatred will never be quelled. Xing Shun snorted coldly. Xiaofeng narrowed his eyes. No wonder. No wonder Qingxiu has a good impression of Ling Xiao. So this bastard is acting like this. Killing a devil? Puffed. The coldness in Xia Feng's eyes grew thicker and thicker. At this moment, he had already guessed that Ling Xiao was putting on a show to get close to Han Qingxiu. After all, in his previous life, he liked to direct and act himself. Qingxiu, wait for me. I will expose Ling Xiao's scheme as soon as possible. Of course, the prerequisite is that I have to find a suitable opportunity. What do you mean by suitable opportunity? It's probably the kind of opportunity where I can't be in danger. That's right. This person must die. He killed a disciple of the Devil Path. Senior, I suggest we kill him directly. Don't give him a chance to quibble. Xia Feng gritted his teeth and spoke with agitation. Ling Xiao. Oh, Ling Xiao, you didn't expect this, did you? I told you to act cool. Now, you've brought disaster upon yourself. Xia Feng couldn't help but smile at the thought of Ling Xiao being targeted by God Emperor. The great devil will attack with lightning. As long as he killed Ling Xiao, his Dao heart would be flawless. At that time, he just needed to find a place to cultivate in peace. When he was free, he would look for the secret realms in the Shenzhou continent. His life would be complete. Yes, you've seen Ling Xiao, right? Tonight, you will accompany me to the frigid moon Immortal Mountain and kill this disciple. Just as Xia Feng was thinking about the future, Xing Shun's next words made his expression freeze. Tonight, enter the frigid moon Immortal Mountain? Kill Ling Xiao. Damn, did I hear it wrong? Although you are a great demon and your cultivation is terrifying, there are several god emperors above the 5th grade guarding the cold moon Celestial Mountain. Are you sure you're going up the mountain to kill people and not to be killed? It was quite sudden. Xia Feng tried to recall the name Xingyuan Mountain. He had never heard of it in the western border. You're not a local devil, are you? Is he from another city? I'm afraid you don't even know the background of Cold Moon Immortal Palace, right? What? You don't dare? Xing Shun looked at Xia Feng coldly. A trace of suspicion flashed in his eyes. A real devil is not afraid of danger. He trains his devil heart in life and death situations. You say, Senior, the Cold Moon Palace Master is a 7th grade divine emperor. Xia Feng swallowed hard. He believed in the Tao of immorality. He wouldn't do something like throwing his life away. He wouldn't dare to try anything unless he was 90% sure of it. Moreover, he had just escaped from Cold Moon Immortal Palace. Was he going to return at night? Wasn't he walking right into a trap? So what if she's a 7th grade divine emperor? I can come and go as I please in this world. Even a venerable can't stop me, let alone a 7th grade divine emperor. Xing Shun sneered. Demonic aura surged around him. Although he had the aura of a god emperor, it was no different from bragging in Xia Feng's ears. Venerable? Are you saying you're more powerful than the divine masters of the sacred sect? If you're so powerful, why didn't you go to heaven? Ha! Devils are indeed arrogant and don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Senior, now that the Cold Moon Immortal Palace has appeared, all the experts in the western border have their eyes on this place. I think for your safety, it's best to wait for Ling Xiao to come out of Cold Moon Immortal Palace before killing him. Xia Feng analyzed with a serious expression. Oh, do you mean you don't believe me? Xing Shen narrowed his eyes. Before Xia Feng could react, he waved his hand. Heaven and earth turned dark instantly. Endless demonic aura blocked Xia Feng's vision. However, before Xia Feng could cry out in surprise, he felt dizzy and light shone in front of him again. He was still in the wilderness, but it was obviously not the same place as before. In other words, the great devil could shift space with just a thought. It was quite sudden. Xia Feng felt that perhaps he really had the ability to kill Ling Xiao in front of the experts of Cold Moon Immortal Palace. At the very least, this space-shifting technique could save his life. More importantly, he was able to transform the space around him. This was fundamentally different from a talisman or something like that. Senior, you're proficient in the space-shifting technique? To be honest, Xia Feng was in awe of the great devil at this moment. At the same time, he also somewhat acknowledged his arrogance. Indeed, mastering the space-shifting technique could allow one to travel freely in the world. Even if it was a ninth-grade divine emperor, as long as they could not kill him in one strike, they would not be able to keep him here. Wonderful. In this case, he could go to Cold Moon Immortal Palace. Moreover, as long as he had a good relationship with this great devil, he could ask him to send him to the entrance of the secret realm when the Cold Moon Immortal Palace opened. At that time, he would find a fortune and become a fairy. Would he be afraid of Cold Moon Immortal Palace? Those who survived a great disaster were bound to have good fortune in the future. The ancients didn't lie. Do you believe me now? Seeing the excitement on Xia Feng's face, Xing Shun's lips curled into a mocking smile. This fool was laughing so happily. He was most likely imagining things. What a pity. From the day you met his lordship, every step you took was what his lordship wanted you to take. The whole world is acting. Only a clown like you can smile the most realistically. Smile. The more you smile now, the more you will lose in the future. The Lord will eventually step on you, the destined people, and reach the top of the world. He will make immortals and gods bow down and Buddhas kneel down. The Lord, the tribulation of all races, the death of destiny. Senior, where's this place? Is it far from Cold Moon Immortal Palace? Xiaofeng was anxious. He couldn't wait to kill his way to Cold Moon Immortal Mountain and kill Ling Xiao, the true devil. Only then could he let go of all the worries in his heart. It's not far. I can reach the peak of Cold Moon Immortal Mountain with a thought. Xing Shin's expression was full of arrogance. Yes, this was Ling Xiao's realm. Just now, the pure purple cheese saint physique hid in the dark and took Xiaofeng and Xing Shun into his realm. Now, Ling Xiao's real body was in Cold Moon Immortal Mountain. As long as he wanted, he could summon Xiaofeng to the peak in an instant. That's awesome. Senior, can you teach me the meaning of this technique? Xiaofeng's eyes were full of hope. This great devil had traveled thousands of miles to find him because of his identity as a true devil. Perhaps he wanted to take him as his disciple. If he could master this technique, there would be no place in this world that he couldn't go to. You want to learn it? Xing Shun's eyes suddenly flashed with a trace of evil. It's not impossible. Hearing this, Xiaofeng's expression became excited. However, Xing Shun said with a serious face, but before that, you need to destroy your cultivation base and cultivate it from the beginning. What the F*** CK? Chapter 507. What? Xiaofeng was stunned. Then, he smiled bitterly and nodded. As expected of a secret skill, the cultivation requirements were harsh. It was not impossible to cripple one's cultivation, but to master this technique, it was not something that could be done in a short period of time. Now that the immortal world was about to open, he had to enter the secret realm to search for treasures. It was not appropriate to destroy his cultivation now. I understand. When the immortal world is over, please teach me the secret of this skill. Young man, you are very smart. Xing Shun was stunned. He did not expect Xiaofeng to be so cruel to him. He had a secret skill with a hammer. What he said just now was just to deceive him. He did not expect Xiaofeng to believe him. Thank you for your compliment. Senior, since you can reach the Cold Moon Celestial Palace with just a thought, why don't we go and kill that demon? No, I mean the disciple of the divine envoy to avenge Jiangyu. No hurry. It's still early. It's too risky to go now. Let's wait until it's late. After saying that, Xing Shun sat cross-legged on the ground and started to cultivate. What a joke. If you go now, and the Cold Moon Celestial Palace Master finds out, she will kill you with a wave of her hand. You won't die tonight. However, you will be in great pain. Xiaofeng did not dare to say anything. He stood aside and looked at the mountain in the distance. Ling Xiao, tonight, I will kill you. Achoo. Cold Moon Celestial Palace. In a magnificent ancient palace on top of the mountain, Ling Xiao sat in front of the table and drank tea. Beside him, Han Qingqiu was quietly brewing tea. However, there was a trace of doubt on her face. What do you want to ask? Ask away. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. He put down the teacup and looked at Han Qingqiu. Young master, since you have set up so many traps, you must want to kill Xiaofeng. Why didn't you take the opportunity to kill him when he ran away? Han Qingqiu hesitated for a moment. In the end, she asked the question that was bothering her the most. Judging from Ling Zhao's previous plans, he must have wanted to kill Xiaofeng. However, the time was ripe today. Why did he let him go? Because he can't die yet. Not only can he not die, but when the time comes, I need you to do something for me. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and raised his head to look outside the palace. Suddenly, a fierce aura whistled through the air. It was overflowing with Tao insight, and it faintly carried a peerless aura. Young master, please give your orders. Han Qingqiu didn't dare to ask too much. The more she interacted with him, the more she felt that she couldn't see through this young master. His methods and temperament were even more terrifying than those Emperor God experts who had lived for hundreds of years. This was especially true for the indifference on his face. It was as if everything in the world was within his control. Originally, Han Qingqiu had planned to capture him with her beauty and use him as a chess piece. But now, when she saw Ling Zhao's eyes and the faintly discernible smile at the corner of his mouth, she felt a chill run down her spine and her whole body went soft. Let's go. There's no rush. I'll tell you when Xiaofeng comes tonight. Ling Xiao stood up and walked out of the hall. Even he was a little surprised by the sharpness just now. It was obvious that there was a good show going on outside the palace. Will Xiaofeng come tonight? Looking at the tall figure who was walking away, Han Qingqiu was confused. But in the end, she didn't ask any more questions and chased after him. At the same time, outside the palace, on the Greenstone Plaza, countless heaven's favorites from the western border gathered in one place. Looking at the two figures standing before them, their eyes were filled with excitement. The western border was in chaos, and there were many heaven's favorites. But the number of heaven's favorites that people feared was less than 5. And right now, the two people standing before them were the top of the western border's pyramid. Mo Wuya, Chu Qiancheng. The former's identity was mysterious, and the technique he cultivated was equally mysterious. Every heaven's favorite from the western border knew that Mo Wuya's fighting prowess was terrifying and his methods were miraculous. But no one had ever seen him fight, because everyone who had seen him fight was dead. Such a rumor undoubtedly added a trace of mystery to the 3 words, Mo Wuya. As for Chu Tianqing, he was originally a useless prince of the Great Chu. His life was full of troubles, and he was ridiculed by everyone. But a few years ago, he rose to power. Not only did he kill his own brother and become the crown prince of the Great Chu, but he also focused on the Tao. He made continuous breakthroughs and was now a 6th-grade divine general. Moreover, Chu Tianqing cultivated a peerless blade technique. Rumor has it that no one in the divine general realm could block one of his attacks. Even a deity overlord would have to avoid it. But right now, the two heavens favorite from the western border were staring at each other coldly. They stood in the middle of the plaza with swords drawn. Why are the two of them fighting? I don't know. Chu Tianqing is known as the Blade Maniac. He always likes to challenge the strong. Maybe he's unwilling to accept Mr. Mo's invincibility? What do you know? Rumor has it that Chu Tianqing has liked Princess Yuan Yao for many years. When he was young, Chu Tianqing was unparalleled and talented. The Great Chu's Great Yuan arranged a marriage for the two of them. Unfortunately, Chu Tianqing was crippled overnight and the marriage was dropped. However, Princess Yuan Yao is kind and benevolent. Rumor has it that she has been encouraging Chu Tianqing to walk out of his predicament through letters. Therefore, the two of them probably still have feelings for each other. Now, Chu Tianqing is worthy of Princess Yuan Yao. That's right. He's standing up again. But Mr. Mo doesn't seem to be bad either. He's full of mysteries, and his Tao is natural. Although he doesn't have Chu Tianqing's background, he's handsome. I'm on Mr. Mo's side. I think Mr. Mo is a better match for Princess Yuan Yao. Chu Tianqing is too inflexible. Hearing the discussions in the plaza, Ling Xiao looked at the black-clothed young man who was standing opposite Mo Wuya. The corner of his mouth curled into a playful smile. A love triangle. However, From the looks of it, Chu Tianqing seemed to be stronger. 4,000 fate points, 6th grade divine general, and the tyrannical saber divine physique. His body was surrounded by an unparalleled aura. Even his eyes were as sharp as a saber. At first glance, one could tell that this person was a cultivation maniac with a pure Tao heart. Mo Wuya might not be his opponent. Wonderful. The three heavenly wills were now tied together. When the time came, it would undoubtedly be easier to cut them apart. Among the three, Yuan Yao was the leader. As long as he could deal with her, Mo Wuya and Chu Tianqing wouldn't be a problem. Unparalleled tyrannical saber. It sounded awesome, but unfortunately, your saber won't be able to cut me. Mo Wuya. The black-clothed Chu Tianqing's eyes were cold. He looked at the young man in front of him coldly. One couldn't tell whether he was happy or sad. In other words, those who were called a Tao maniac were mostly the same. Zombie face, harsh tone, and unreasonable. They looked like they were detached from the world. In their hearts, the saber and the sword were the most trustworthy companions. Such a person would definitely be terrifying, cold and heartless. His heart was set on the Tao. Once his saber and sword were unsheathed, he would return stained with blood. But he deserved to be scolded for being so pretentious. So it's Brother Chu. I wonder why Brother Chu is blocking my way. Mo Wuya's face was gentle. Compared to Chu Tianqing, he had a more worldly aura, which made people have a good impression of him. But sometimes, the gentler the appearance, the more confident one was. It was the exact opposite. At this moment, Mo Wuya was most likely panicking. Chapter 508. Divine Speech and Heavenly Divine Body. These two talents sounded impressive, but in reality, they were completely useless. Mo Wuya's true strength was his words and actions. In other words, his ability to fool people was unparalleled. However, if he were asked to draw his sword and kill his enemy, Chu Tianqing's saber strike would probably cause him to reveal his true colors. This was a showdown between a pretentious person and a hothead. Although Chu Tianqing was strong, he had yet to comprehend the true essence of the saber. If there was no woman in his heart, he would naturally draw his saber. As a saber cultivator, how could he cut off his shackles and reach the peak of the great Tao for a woman? Ling Xiao felt that he had to teach this Chu Tianqing a lesson. He had to let go of his greed and focus on seeking death. I heard that young Master Mo's cultivation is unfathomable and his combat strength is close to that of a demon. You are known as the #1 genius of the Western border. Today, I would like to see it for myself. Chu Tianqing's expression was indifferent and cold. On his back, a heavy saber was wrapped in layers of cotton cloth. It looked very old and shabby. However, no one dared to underestimate this saber, just like no one dared to underestimate Chu Tianqing. This saber was called the illusory world of 3000. Its origin was mysterious, but it became famous in the Western border as Chu Tianqing became famous. When the saber was drawn, the illusory world was broken. The illusory world of 3000 turned into smoke. Immortals and Buddhas could not stop the saber. Gods and demons could be slaughtered. Haha, Brother Chu, you should know my habits, right? I usually don't fight, but once I do, I will definitely kill my enemy. Mo Wuya shook his head and chuckled. His eyes were as bright as the stars. However, the words he said inexplicably sent a chill down people's spines. What a domineering and arrogant attitude. Mo Wuya was indeed the top genius of the Western border. My illusory world will not be drawn easily. Once it is drawn, it will return with blood. Chu Tianqing was unmoved, and his tone was stern. It was obvious that he was determined not to retreat from this battle. Return with blood? Brother Chu, your saber is a demonic weapon. Throughout the history of the Shenzhou continent, all treasures that drink blood are extremely evil. Brother Chu, I advise you to put down your saber as soon as possible to prevent your Tao heart from falling. Mo Wuya was shocked and tried to persuade Chu Tianqing. Hearing this, many Heaven's favorites squinted their eyes and turned to look at the heavy blade behind Chu Tianqing. Realization dawned on them. What young Master Mo said made sense. A blood-drinking treasure was definitely evil. Who would have thought that the saber in Chu Tianqing's hand was actually an evil item? Cut the crap. Mo Wuya, make your move. Chu Tianqing frowned slightly and looked at Mo Wuya in surprise. Originally, he thought that such a peerless genius, whose reputation spread far and wide, would not tolerate any provocation. But now, by the looks of it, this Mo Wuya was different from all the other demonic geniuses he had seen before. Wait! Mo Wuya raised his hand and stopped Chu Tianqing, who was about to draw his blade. His expression had already returned to normal. Wuya has long heard of Brother Chu's name, and has long since had the intention to do so. However, now that the frigid moon immortal world is about to open, I suggest that Brother Chu wait a little longer. As his words fell, Mo Wuya glanced towards the great hall in the distance. There, a golden-robed figure was quickly walking over. Since you have the intention, why wait? Chu Tianqing held the hilt of his saber and hesitated for a moment. As for Ling Xiao, when he saw Yuan Yao appear in the distance, he could already guess what Mo Wuya was going to do next. Humph, the secret realm is extremely dangerous. Only less than 10% of the people who entered the secret realm were able to come out alive. Yuan Yao is all alone. I can't be at ease. If I were to fight with you, even if I managed to kill you, I would definitely be injured. At that time, who would protect Yao? She's so pure and kind. Chu Tianqing, can you not worry about her? Mo Wuya coldly snorted. The power of the Tao laws around him suppressed the heaven and earth, dazzling everyone. His purple robe fluttered in the wind, giving people a feeling of unparalleled love. Young Master Mo, as expected of you. Too infatuated. Young Master Mo isn't afraid of Chu Tianqing at all. He's just worried about Princess Yuan Yao. That Chu Tianqing is really selfish and tyrannical. Does he really think that he's invincible? Hearing this, even Chu Tianqing was stunned on the spot. In his heart, he didn't want to compete with Mo Wuya for the title of Shijiang's #1 prodigy. For some reason, he didn't like to see other people standing beside Yuan Yao, although their engagement had been annulled now. With Yuan Yao's peerless beauty, the primitive emperor saw her as the next emperor of Daiyuan. It was unrealistic to want to have a marriage alliance with her. However, in those years, his cultivation had been crippled and he had been treated coldly. It was the letters from the princess of Daiyuan that encouraged him. Gradually, the death in his heart was worn away, and he supported himself until the day he rose again. That's right. This fantasy 3000 was the inheritance of Chu Tianqing's mother. Back then, before his mother died, she asked him to treat this saber well. However, Chu Tianqing didn't expect that the seal and the saber would be bound by his bloodline. He unintentionally touched it and awakened the saber soul within. Since Chu Tianqing's cultivation had been crippled, he coincidentally met the requirements of the saber soul. He cultivated the divine art again and cultivated the unparalleled saber intent, stepping on the path of conquering the heaven and earth. Therefore, what was destiny? It was the accumulation of impossibilities on a person's body. The more impossibilities there were, the higher the person's luck and the higher the upper limit. Do you understand? Note it down. Mo Wuya, you and I will have a battle in the immortal world. In the end, Chu Tianqing didn't continue to pester her. Mo Wuya was right. Yao was pure and kind by nature. She was easily bewitched by bad people. Even if she knew it was a trap, sometimes Yao was willing to be deceived just to make others happy. Such a woman deserved to be protected. However, the one protecting her shouldn't be Mo Wuya, but him, Chu Tianqing. In the past few years, although he hadn't seen Yuan Yao personally, the two of them had been very close through letters, sharing details of their lives. They were already very close. Originally, Chu Tianqing thought that this trip to the secret realm would be a sweet one. However, who would have thought that there would be him by her side? Since that was the case between men, strength should speak. If you're stronger than me, I'll give up my worries and use the saber as my companion. However, if you're no match for me, you should disappear from this world and not disturb my Yaoer's heart. You are, Brother Tiancheng. However, just as Chu Tiancheng was about to turn around and leave, a soft cry came from behind him. Turning around, a fairy-like face entered his eyes. Her bright eyebrows were charming, revealing a hint of shyness. With just one look, Chu Tiancheng guessed the identity of the girl in front of him. Yaoer, especially the girl's clear and pure black eyes. They were like the cool spring water in the nine heavens' immortal pond, sacred and beautiful, without a trace of the mundane world's troubles. You are, Yaoer. A melodramatic love drama was playing out on the peak of Coal Moon Mountain. Two people destined by the heavens had feelings for each other. One look was all it took for them to fall in love. As their eyes met, an indescribable feeling arose in their hearts. Marriage was predestined by the heavens. This was probably what it meant. At this moment, there was no one on the peak. Only the man and woman, standing facing each other, had eyes for each other. Cough, cough, Princess Yuan Yao, we meet again. However, just as the world was moving, discordant laughter suddenly sounded from the crowd. Chapter 509. Hearing the voice, Chu Tiancheng and Yuan Yao's expressions froze at the same time. The uncontrollable affection in their eyes dissipated. Ling Xiao walked out of the crowd with a smile and stood beside Emouya. Generally speaking, when a man and a woman look at each other for 3 seconds, it is easy to have an impulse and secrete hormones. I held my watch and interrupted you in 2.5 seconds. Are you surprised and excited? My lord. Yuan Yao's expression froze. She turned to look at Ling Xiao. Her beautiful eyes flashed with shyness. To be honest, she did have a good impression of Chu Tiancheng. Although this kind of meeting was very different from a letter conversation, the good thing was that this Chu crown prince's appearance and temperament were outstanding. But Lord Ling Xiao's benevolence and kindness made Yuan Yao regret not having met him sooner. Inexplicably, Yuan Yao's heart was flustered. What should I do? If my lord also has feelings for me, how should I choose between the two of them without hurting either of them? It was very annoying. Ling Xiao pretended to look at Chu Tiancheng in confusion. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes, but his heart was filled with disdain. If you wholeheartedly followed the Tao and treated the saber as your life, it would be troublesome to deal with you. But looking at Chu Tiancheng's eyes just now, it was obvious that he had deep feelings for Yuan Yao. So, a saber fanatic who was in love was much easier to deal with. Of course, this kind of sword fanatic and saber fanatic would more or less have some sadness in them. Either they were hurt by a woman and had no distracting thoughts, or they had someone in their heart but could not fall in love, so they worked hard to cultivate and were willing to slay immortals and gods for her, silently protecting her for the rest of her life. For someone like Chu Tiancheng, who had fallen from the peak and returned to the peak, although his Tao heart was more tenacious than other monstrous geniuses. But, given Yuan Yao's personality, she would most likely not abandon him during this process. So, Chu Tiancheng must have regarded her as his life. You treat a woman as your Tao heart. Then if I break her, will I break your Tao heart? Chu Crown Prince, Chu Tiancheng. Chu Tiancheng frowned as he looked at Ling Xiao. Especially when he saw the panic on Yuan Yao's face, it made him feel a little angry. Although he did not go down the mountain to welcome Ling Xiao that day, he had heard that a divine disciple had come to the frigid moon Celestial Mountain. To be able to make Yuan Yao nervous, it was very obvious that this young man was most likely this person. Of course, in Chu Tiancheng's eyes, the divine envoys of the sacred sect and the disciples of the disciples were all meaningless. If one wanted to be respected by him, there was only one point, and that was strength. Although he couldn't see through Ling Xiao's cultivation at this moment, judging from his age, he was at most 16 or 17 years old. How strong could his cultivation be? Among those of the same generation, the number of people who could withstand the might of a saber could be counted on one hand. If one slash was not enough, then 2 slashes. Oh, so you're the legendary saber maniac. Ling Xiao nodded and chuckled. His expression was indifferent, as if he didn't feel the slightest bit of reverence for Chu Tianqing's peerless reputation. I heard that your saber is invincible. Why don't you let me have a taste of it? If he wanted to seize Chu Tianqing's fate as soon as possible, the most direct and effective way was to attack him head-on. Destiny models like this had always been stubborn and pressed forward courageously. In their eyes, all the geniuses in the world were stepping stones on their path to immortality. However, meeting me was just the beginning of your nightmare. Later, you will gradually realize that your saber can no longer cut through any enemy. Are you looking down on me? Chu Tianqing frowned. The indifference in Ling Xiao's eyes made him feel like he was being looked down upon for a long time. It's not that I look down on you, but you are not worthy of my respect. Ling Xiao shook his head, his expression cold and arrogant. Hearing this, the geniuses of the imperial court and the disciples of the cold palace narrowed their eyes slightly. He was indeed a disciple of the sacred sect. His domineering aura was indeed terrifying. Although no one had seen Ling Xiao fight before, and Chu Tianqing was a sixth-grade divine general, his saber was extremely domineering. It was said that when he was a fifth-grade divine general, he had killed a divine marquis. However, judging from this young lord's words, it seemed that he did not put him in his eyes at all. To be chosen by the divine envoy as the Western Frontier's preacher, this young lord must have his strong points. Otherwise, he would not be so confident. Chu Tianqing was probably going to fall today. Furthermore, I feel that a proud daughter of heaven like Princess Yuan Yao is not someone that just anyone can match up to. What? Mo Wuya and Chu Tianqing's expressions changed at the same time. They looked at Ling Xiao with shock. Could it be understood that this young lord was also interested in Yuan Yao? So, he was actually making a move now to prove that only the strong were worthy of Yuan Yao. Very inexplicably, Yuan Yao's face turned slightly red, and her eyes became more and more confused. As expected, the Lord is interested in me. But what should I do? You are all such outstanding geniuses. I really don't want to make any of you sad. At this moment, Yuan Yao wished that she could split into 3 clones to fulfill their wishes. Fine. If you want to fight, I will accompany you today. Chu Tianqing took a deep breath. Since this person had already put it this way, if he still hesitated and refused, wouldn't he completely chill Yuan Yao's heart? Actually, Chu Tianqing agreed with Ling Xiao's words from the bottom of his heart. Only the strong were worthy of Yuan Yao. Fine. Mo Wuya does not have the guts to fight with me. As long as I trample you under my feet, who in the Western Frontier would dare to disrespect me? 3 moves. If I can't defeat you in 3 moves, this battle will be considered a victory. Chu Tianqing took a deep breath. I will not show off easily. However, in front of Yuan Yao today, since he was in a fight, he had to fight beautifully. At this moment, Chu Tianqing's blade intent was biting cold, and his face was filled with cold arrogance. Coupled with his black robes, he could be said to be extraordinarily heroic. However, Ling Xiao smiled and shook his head. Is that so? Then I am looking forward to it. Oomph. Chu Tianqing snorted coldly. He gripped the heavy blade on his back and pulled it out. For some reason, the calmer Ling Xiao was, the angrier he felt. Buzz. The blade intent spread out, shaking the void. The heavens and earth suddenly quieted down. Everyone only felt a chill spread from the bottom of their hearts. When they looked at Chu Tianqing, their eyes unconsciously carried a trace of reverence. The title of Saber Fanatic was indeed well-deserved. Just the blade intent he casually released was not something an ordinary genius could resist. Mo Wuya, in particular, had a hint of panic in his eyes. Fortunately, I was quick-witted and did not fight with Chu Tianqing just now. Otherwise, I would have lost my reputation and life today. However, we saw the indifference on Ling Xiao's face, and Mo Wuya had a misconception. Perhaps in this lord's eyes, the so-called peerless genius was just a joke. Yuan Yao was fragrant? Of course, she was fragrant. She was a genius, the princess of the Yuan, and had a kind heart. As long as he could take her down, his future would be smooth. However, from the looks of it, this young lord seemed even more fragrant. The disciple of a divine envoy was peerless. If he can win, I, Wuya, am willing to sever my feelings and focus on the Tao. Well, I'm not afraid. I'm just enlightened. Chapter 510. There's a flaw in your blade intent. Ling Xiao shook his head coldly with an arrogant expression. The blade intent that seemed natural to others did not seem to have any power in his eyes. Of course, if it was anyone else who said this, they would be arrogant and boastful. But when it came from Ling Xiao's mouth, it was inexplicably convincing. Perhaps this young lord's vision had long surpassed their scope of understanding. Therefore, when Chu Tianqing's body was covered in spiritual light and he swung his blade that could destroy the world, the fear in everyone's eyes seemed to have dissipated. Were they too arrogant? Of course not. It was just that Lord Ling Xiao's aura gave them a sense of security. Looking down on the world, it was probably referring to people like him, right? Otherwise, look, when Chu Tianqing's blade light was about to fall on his head, His Excellency did not move at all. There was even a hint of ridicule in his eyes. It was as if he could kill Chu Tianqing with a wave of his hand. F***CK. What did it mean to remain calm even when empty Tai collapses in front of you? My Excellency, your calmness was the cool breeze of April, the cold rain of September, the warm sun of December, comfortable and refreshing. Pooh! However, just as everyone was exclaiming in their hearts, the blade light instantly cut Ling Xiao's figure in half, shattering it into pieces on the ground. His Excellency split open? How is this possible? Very suddenly, the peak of Cold Moon Mountain fell into a dead silence. Everyone looked at Ling Xiao's figure that had been cut in half and swallowed hard. What happened to being able to kill with a wave of his hand? How could His Excellency be cut in half so easily? Wait, there was no blood. There was no blood. It was an afterimage. Instantly, the shock on everyone's faces became even more intense. The youths who could stand in Cold Moon Immortal Palace were the top geniuses of the western border. But just now, right under their eyes, Ling Xiao's figure had disappeared. Especially Yuan Yao, Mo Wuya, and the others. Their faces were even more shocked. What kind of terrifying speed was that? It was so terrifying that even though they had seen it with their own eyes, they still could not see when Ling Xiao moved. Lord Ling Xiao, as expected of you, of all the cultivation techniques in the world, only speed was invincible. Just by relying on this heaven-defying speed, Ling Xiao was already in an invincible position. How is this possible? Chu Tianqing stood where he was, a dazed expression on his face. He had sensed earlier than anyone else that his saber had not been able to cut Ling Xiao at all. But how is this possible? With his strength as a 6th-grade divine general, he could be considered one of the top individuals in the entire Xingzhou. How could he not even be able to detect his aura? This is your strength? A chuckle suddenly came from behind Chu Tianqing. Ling Xiao's figure stood with his hands behind his back. His handsome face carried an otherworldly smile. This is only the first move. After a brief moment of shock, Chu Tianqing's face calmed down again. To be honest, he had indeed not exerted his full strength in that slash earlier. Originally, he just didn't want to expose his strength in front of everyone, and he also didn't want to kill this disciple by accident. However, since you were so arrogant, young Masterling, be careful. With that, Chu Tianqing suddenly clenched his fist. The ancient bronze saber suddenly lit up with a dazzling golden light. Space collapsed under the saber's blade. A bleak killing intent began to spread across the peak of Cold Moon Mountain. The saber intent turned into wind and swept across the sky. A whirlwind suddenly swirled around Chu Tianqing's body. At this moment, his aura had completely disappeared. Only the heavy golden saber was left. It seemed to have pierced through the ages and stretched across the sky. Dominating saber art, destroy. Following the sound of a deep voice, everyone was dumbstruck as they saw a golden light suddenly light up above Ling Xiao's head. Then, Chu Tianqing's figure stepped out of the void. Divine light flickered around his body. As if a god had descended from the heavens, he was filled with solemn, killing intent. With a slash of his saber, he trapped the world and firmly locked onto Ling Zhao's figure. At the peak of Cold Moon Mountain, the sound of the Tao was chanting. Chu Tianqing held his saber with both hands and slashed at the sky. Like the Milky Way pouring down from the nine heavens, Chu Tianqing tore through the sky and pierced through the sky. Within 100 miles, all the disciples' bodies lit up with a mysterious light. They frantically retreated to avoid the world-destroying saber. Facing such a domineering aura, Ling Zhao stood with his hands behind his back. He still had a smile on his face. But this time, he didn't turn into a shadow to escape. In other words, in Chu Tianqing's eyes, he couldn't dodge this saber. Lord Ling Zhao, be careful. Yuan Yao's face was pale as she shouted in alarm. But at this moment, Mo Wuya firmly pressed her to the ground and shook his head slightly. Chu Tianqing's saber aura was already formed. Even if Yuan Yao rushed over, it would be useless. Moreover, for some reason, seeing the indifference in Ling Zhao's eyes, Mo Wuya felt that he still didn't take this saber seriously. How was this possible? This saber attack, which contained almost all of Chu Tianqing's spiritual energy, was enough to shake a divine overlord. Could it be that Chu Tianqing's strength had surpassed that? But how old was he? 16? 17? Suddenly, Mo Wuya made up his mind. As long as Ling Zhao could withstand the saber attack, he would give up Lik Xiao. F***CK. Can't he do that? This young lord was obviously interested in Yuan Yao. If he dared to pester him again, he might lose his life. Buzz. The saber light pierced through the clouds, creating ripples in the air. However, when Chu Tianqing's figure appeared a few dozen feet above Ling Zhao's head, the latter suddenly raised his head. His eyes were filled with immortal light. Then he calmly stretched out 2 fingers and grasped the saber light. At this moment, the world fell silent. Everything was silent. Everyone stared at the young man with fear in their eyes. Their eyes were wide open and their mouths were agape. It was as if they had seen a ghost in broad daylight. My lord, you haven't won yet. Are you already celebrating your victory? Buzz. At this moment, the saber light finally fell from the sky. Countless cracks appeared on the blue stone of the square. Within a radius of 100 feet, the ancient trees were cut down. Grass and trees were sent flying. Some of the weaker geniuses of the western border even groaned. Blood dripped from the corner of their mouths. Endless smoke and dust filled the air. Chu Tianqing and Ling Zhao's figures were instantly covered. Yuan Yao, Mo Wuya, and the others clenched their fists and looked nervously at the center of the square. They could vaguely see 2 figures standing there. Only Han Qingqiu's beautiful face didn't show the slightest change from beginning to end. With her young master's strength, not to mention Chu Tianqing, even if all the geniuses here joined hands, they might not be able to defeat him. Chu Tianqing's saber was overbearing and powerful. However, it was obvious that he could not defeat her young master. In fact, he was not a threat at all. Finally, light shone from the sky, piercing through the layers of fog. The doubts in everyone's eyes finally disappeared. What replaced it was a shock that was close to fear. Chapter 511. As the dust settled, the sky became clear again. At the peak of the mountain, Ling Zhao stood there with one hand behind his back and the other pointing to the sky. His white robe made him look like an immortal. The sunlight shone on his face, raising the corner of his mouth. However, in front of him, Chu Tianqing's face was filled with fear and shock. In his hand, the golden light on the heavy saber had already disappeared. Even the tip of the saber was pinched by the youth's 2 fingers, unable to move. Countless gasps could be heard. The eyes of all the heavens' prides were devoid of any other emotions. All that was left was a deep sense of respect. If they did not see it with their own eyes, they would not believe that there was a youth in this world who could stop Chu Tianqing's heaven-slashing saber with 2 fingers. Although, They knew that the words disciple of a divine envoy contained supreme prestige. But now, it seemed that they had still underestimated this young lord's battle strength, shocking the world, shocking the ancients, and dazzling the contemporaries. A supreme youth with unrivaled, immortal potential. If it was said that Chu Tiansheng's first saber made everyone see Ling Zhao's unrivaled speed, in that case, the second slash practically made them believe that the latter's cultivation was definitely above theirs. Before today, the number one genius of the western border was either Chu Tiansheng, Mo Wuya, or Han Qingwei. But after today, this number one position no longer had any meaning. Many people had already lost interest in the Cold Moon Immortals. With Lord Ling Zhao's personal arrival, what did the immortal world's treasures have to do with them? How could it be? Could it be that my saber intent is flawed? Chu Tiansheng's figure stood in the air, looking down at the heavy saber in his hand. The illusory world 3000 could slash the heavens and earth. Why was it unable to slash a youth today? Was he hiding his cultivation? However, even a divine overlord wouldn't be able to remain so calm in the face of Badao. Just now, Chu Tiansheng faintly felt that the youth did not use any spiritual power at all. Just a wisp of coldness emitted from his body, and his saber intent seemed to have frozen and stopped. However, under the star robe that Chu Tiansheng could not see, Ling Zhao's arm was already covered with dragon scales. Demonic runes flickered on it, and they seemed to be ancient and mysterious. Beep, the child of Destiny's Tao heart, is trembling, self-doubt. Congratulations to the host for plundering 500 luck points and 5,000 villain points. Hearing the notification from the system, Ling Zhao's lips curled into a smile. However, it was still not enough. The trembling of your Tao heart is just the beginning. You will soon realize that not only can your saber not hurt me, even the saber art you cultivate is trash in my eyes. From Chu Tiansheng's growth, Ling Zhao could roughly guess that this child of destiny was hiding a secret. Only by obtaining a fortuitous encounter could a new life begin. Those who had their cultivation crippled and rose up again were either guided by an expert, old grandpa, or the remnant soul of a mutated beast. And since Chu Tiansheng walked the path of the saber, perhaps the secret was hidden in this ancient saber. Fantasy World 3000. Just from a name alone, one could tell that this saber was extremely powerful. Furthermore, Ling Zhao could clearly sense that there was a faint trace of soul sense within the blade. Artifact soul? Or was an ancient era's expert sealed within? Interesting. However, don't you feel bored hiding in the saber all the time? Why don't you come out and see the sun? Young Master Chu, it's been 2 moves. Ling Zhao smiled and gently loosened 2 fingers. Chu Tiansheng's figure was sent flying backwards, landing 100 feet away. At this moment, he could see the change in Yuan Yao's eyes. The dazzling look she had when she was looking at him had gradually become cold and cheerless. On the contrary, the look in her eyes when she looked at Ling Zhao was as bright as the sun. He didn't blame her, because just like the love of beauty, which woman in this world didn't covet the strong? Moreover, Ling Zhao in front of him had sword-like eyebrows and a celestial aura. Not to mention Yuan Yao. Even Chu Tiansheng had to exclaim that he was a peerless young master. However, Yuan Yao was where his Tao heart was. In front of her, Chu Tiansheng couldn't lose and didn't dare to lose. Phew! Chu Tiansheng took a deep breath, and the shock on his face gradually disappeared. In his eyes, there was an extremely strong desire to fight. Young Master Ling Zhao, I have to admit that you're the strongest opponent I've met so far. In order to show my respect for you, I'll use all my strength in my next attack. However, I'd like to remind you that there's no way out for you after this attack. Hearing this, the Western Border Heaven's favorites looked at him with disdain. If it was in the past, they wouldn't have doubted Chu Tiansheng's pretentiousness. However, today you can't even cut off 2 of His Excellency's fingers, and you're still bragging. What? Judging by your tone, are you hiding your cultivation level or hiding your skills? Puffed. So what? His Excellency Ling Xiao was obviously not serious. Come on, show me. Ling Xiao raised his head, glanced at Yuan Yao, and smiled. His actions instantly caused the latter's face to turn slightly red. His Excellency, do you mean you're doing all this for me? It should be, right? But he is not with Han Xianzi. Is His Excellency a jerk? But why do I have this inexplicable urge to be scummed by him? Be careful, His Excellency. Chu Tianqing nodded indifferently, his black robe fluttering in the wind. In his hand, the heavy saber was suddenly surrounded by a black mist that looked like tentacles and emitted an evil aura. In a short while, the saber hilt had disappeared. In other words, it had merged with Chu Tianqing's right hand. If not for the fact that there was no demonic aura on his body, the experts of Cold Moon Celestial Palace would have appeared to slay the demon. Even so, the faces of many Western border geniuses turned pale as they looked at the young man who had become one with the saber. Is this the legendary highest level of saber cultivation? One with the saber? Chung-er, why are you calling me so urgently? An old voice suddenly came from Chu Tianqing's soul sea. Chu Tianqing's face turned serious, and he said with his soul consciousness, Old Saber, I need your help. Didn't I tell you that my deity can't be exposed easily? You have to wait until we enter the immortal world to wake me up? This is an important place of the immortal world. Once someone notices my existence, both of us will be doomed. Old Saber, you don't have to release your aura. You just need to help me perform that move. Chu Tianqing shook his head slightly. How could he not know the risk of waking Old Saber up now? But if he was defeated by Ling Xiao today, he would lose Yuan Yao completely. He cannot afford to pay this price. Is it because of that girl? After all, Old Saber had accompanied Chu Tianqing for 10 years. He naturally knew what Chu Tianqing was obsessed with. But at this moment, there was a trace of inexplicable gloominess in his voice. Chung-er, I told you long ago that you can only reach the peak of the saber path if you cut off your feelings. You will regret it sooner or later. Old Saber, didn't you also say that I will use killing to prove my feelings and build my eternal reputation? There was an unquestionable determination in Chu Tianqing's voice. Killing and feelings had nothing to do with each other. But today, he seemed to have understood something. Was it wrong to use killing to protect the love of one's heart? Sai, when I said feelings, I meant the feelings of heaven and earth and the long-cherished wishes of the common people. How can I refer to personal feelings? Forget it. Your cultivation level is still low and you can't understand the true meaning of this. Since this is your ordeal, I will help you this time. In the end, Old Saber did not say much, but his tone was slightly lonely. Get ready. Chapter 512. Dominating Blade Technique. 3,000 Illusory Worlds. Chu Tianqing's voice resounded from the peak of Mount Han. The originally clear sky suddenly darkened. Thousands of illusions rose up in the void. Among them, giants bowed their heads, demonic shadows were destroyed, Tao wheels rose into the sky, and all the worlds were reincarnated. Countless immortal miracles evolved the changes of history, and among the thousands of illusions, a black-robed youth slowly walked over, as if he had descended from the ancient times and pierced through the ages. Suddenly, the youth transformed into a long blade and shattered the illusory world. With a point of sharpness, it swept across all directions. In just an instant, the endless illusions were shattered. There was only one blade left between heaven and earth. Blade will crisscrossed, as if there were 3,000 of them, tearing the void apart. 3,000 blade shadows fell from the sky like a killing array, making one's scalp tingle and unable to dodge. But at this time, Chu Tianqing's figure was also somewhat swaying, and there were even traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that with his current strength, it was impossible for him to withstand the true dominance of this blade technique. But he had no other choice. Since he had given his love to a person, in this life he would not retreat exchange, or regret. This saber strike was terrifying to the extreme. Even the god emperors of the Han Palace, who were hidden in the void, had some shock on their faces. Vaguely, they felt a trace of the great Tao in the blade that filled the sky. As expected of the #1 genius of the western border, the blade maniac lived up to his name. At the very least, in the eyes of the god emperors, there is absolutely no one below the divine lord level who could resist the power of this illusory world. This blade is rather interesting. Ling Xiao nodded slightly, and there was finally a trace of seriousness between his brows. Then, in front of everyone's expectant eyes, a pitch-black blade appeared in his hand. Compared to Chu Tianqing's 3,000 illusory worlds, this black blade seemed too ordinary. On the blade, there was not even a trace of cold light. But when they saw it, they felt a different kind of fear. There seemed to be gods and demons howling in their ears, and heaven and earth crying. So, Lord Ling Xiao was also a blade cultivator. No wonder he could see the flaws in Chu Tianqing's blade at a glance. But in the face of this blade that almost shook heaven and earth, how would Lord deal with it? Unfortunately, it's still too weak. Ling Xiao raised his head and looked at the 3,000 saber shadows with an indifferent expression. Then, he raised the black blade in his hand and gently slashed at the void. Suddenly, a dark light shone in the sky. There was also no devilish chi within it, but there was a hint of world-destroying intent within it. With regard to the Emperor God experts who were hiding in the void, Ling Xiao naturally noticed them. Therefore, he did not use his full strength and only used his spiritual energy. The power of heaven's punishment was something that even gods and Buddhas could not resist. Even if the world devastator Tao law did not appear, how could a mere divine general resist it? The originally dead, illusory world suddenly appeared in the sky. Vast and mighty divine might spread out, containing a domineering aura that could suppress the heavens. Compared to the primordial sky demon, all living things in this world were like ants. It was tyrannical. The heavenly Tao did not tolerate it, and it was eternal. Once the demonic saber was unleashed, all immortals and Buddhas would be slaughtered. You destroyed the 3,000 illusory worlds, and I destroyed the primordial grand mist. Comparing the two, it was clear who was stronger and who was weaker. A wisp of black light appeared in front of Ling Xiao. Then, heaven and earth seemed to fall into a state of silence. Endless darkness shrouded the entire Mount Han. Even the many Emperor God experts widened their eyes and looked in disbelief at the terrifying saber light that swallowed all the light in the world. Boom! In the end, the two equally powerful saber lights collided in midair. In an instant, all life on Mount Han was extinguished, and the heavenly Tao no longer existed. The void shattered layer by layer, and the entire world was destroyed. The Cold Moon Palace Master's expression changed, and she stepped out. The might of a 7th-grade God Emperor formed a heavenly pillar and sealed the space where Ling Xiao and Chu Tianqing were. Even so, the terrifying might that overflowed still overturned the ancient palace at the end of the square. Even the Cold Moon Palace Master's body trembled inexplicably, and her eyes were filled with intense shock. As a divine general, he could shake the might of a God Emperor. At this moment, she did not know whether to call Ling Xiao and Chu Tianqing monstrous or terrifying. Finally, the black light swept across the sky and swallowed the 3,000 saber shadows. In a radius of 1,000 miles, the blue sky shattered, and the sound of Tao was endless. However, under the Cold Moon Palace Master's divine light, the people on the mountain peak could not see the changes. Thus, when the world regained its clarity, everyone only saw a white-clothed figure standing with his hands behind his back with an indifferent expression. The mountain wind blew, and his white robe and hair fluttered. He looked indescribably elegant and free. Zhang in front of him, Chu Tianqing's face was pale, and he seemed to be frightened. However, there was not a single wound on his body. Who won? Looking at the two people above, the entire Mount Han was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. No matter who won or lost today, it was obvious that the world would be shaken. That unparalleled saber intent was not something that a divine general could resist. No, even a divine overlord expert would not dare to easily suppress the two of them. Crack. Until, suddenly, a crisp sound came from the void. Everyone looked over in confusion, and they saw that the ancient saber in Chu Tianqing's hand had shattered inch by inch. Ling Zhao's attack did not seem to cause much damage, but it was extremely humiliating. A firefly dares to compete with the bright moon? At this moment, he only smiled gently, and his face was handsome. Why do you think I gave Chu Tianqing 3 chances to attack? Am I a saint? Damn, use your smart head. The first time, test Chu Tianqing's strength and confirm whether he is a soft persimmon. The second time, force him to use his trump card and test how soft he is. The third time, dig out the secret of his rise and become the heavenly mandate. Then, won't I be able to do whatever I want? What shape I want to shape you into depends on my mood. On Mount Han, countless disciples looked serious, and the respect in their hearts surged. Listen, they are both acting cool, but Lord Ling Xiao is acting so elegantly. Puffed. Feeling the disdain and ridicule in the eyes of the people on the mountain peak, Chu Tianqing rolled his eyes, and his body suddenly trembled, and he fell from the sky. Damn, life is really full of ups and downs, this feeling of being ridiculed and looked down on. He was too familiar with it. Beep, the heavenly mandate's Tao heart is unstable, and he feels that he has lost both his saber and woman. Congratulations to the host for plundering 500 luck points and 5,000 villain points. Brother Tianqing, Yuan Yao was shocked, and her figure rushed out, wanting to catch Chu Tianqing. But at this time, Mo Wuya was one step ahead and appeared in front of Chu Tianqing and caught him in the air. Damn, Princess Yuan Yao, you are now the Lord's woman. It's better if you don't touch him so much. Lord Ling Xiao, there is no need to thank me. From today onwards, Wuya is willing to become a bootlicker and lick you until you are satisfied. Beep, the heavenly mandate's child, Mo Wuya, has the intention to submit. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 300 luck points and 3,000 villain points. Brother Tianqing, Yuan Yao's eyes were red, and her mood was somewhat complicated. Although, she knew that today's chaos was caused by her, but she did not expect that the final outcome would be so tragic. That saber was Chu Tianqing's life. In a letter, the latter did not call it saber, but a close friend. Now that the saber was broken, and Chu Tianqing's life and death were unknown, the outcome of this battle was finally clear. Lord Ling Xiao had won. It's fine, he just fainted because his mind is unstable. This is a heart-nourishing pill. I'll have to trouble young Master Mo to feed it to him. Even though he had won, Ling Xiao was still calm and did not show the slightest bit of arrogance or excitement. His current actions made countless Western border geniuses sigh in their hearts. They could only look up to the young master's righteousness. Chu Tianqing was both a love rival and an opponent. But when Chu Tianqing was injured, Lord Ling Xiao actually took the initiative to give him a pill. What kind of benevolent and righteous action was this? Suddenly, even the usually cold and arrogant Yu Xiao, who was angry because Ling Xiao forced Xiaofeng to leave, could not help but nod slightly. This young man was not as cold and heartless as he seemed on the surface. Could it be that there was really something wrong with Feng Yi? Otherwise, with his character, why would he target him like this? Beep, the heavenly mandate's child, Xiaofeng, has a rift in his heart with his closest kin. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 500 luck points and 5,000 villain points. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.